Ready? 1, 2, 3. Welcome to Muay Thai Bones. Sylvie and Kevin on the road in Thailand.
It's rainy season, so it's raining.
Gotta pronounce loud your beautiful voice. Project.
Louder for the folks in the back.
You were a theater major at Sarah Lawrence.
I was not a theater major.
We know Anne Hathaway is your favorite actress. She hates Anne Hathaway, right?
She also didn't go to Sarah Lawrence.
Oh, she should have. Okay. So we're driving.
You don't have to start with who I hate and negativity.
Well, I made fun of you, and then it's an inside joke between us. I didn't want people to be left out of it.
Yeah, I don't hate Anne Hathaway. I just don't want to watch her.
You hate watching her.
I hate watching her.
Okay, yeah. Especially as Catwoman.
Cat lady, yep.
Cat lady.
Yep.
We're driving back from Chiang Mai. Sylvie has been fought twice.
You can't tell.
Yeah. This is what makes Muay Thai Bones so hardcore, badass, wonderful, is you get the evidence that Sylvie's a fighter right there in the video. If you're listening in the podcast in the iTunes version, Sylvie's got a really nice little shiner from an elbow. Two. Well,
my first fight and my third fight. The first one started it, and then the third one was like, let me just work that in.
Well, we're jumping around, but you fought in Hua Hin against Jam Kwan. She gave you a little elbow. It started a bruise and a little bit of swelling. Mm-hmm. And then we drove up to Chiang Mai and Fight City, right as we call it. And you fought Palmy, rematch. It was a disappointing fight for you, but you learned a lot in the loss. And then 2 days later, you fought Nine Hong, who recently had beat Palmy, and you brought into that fight all the lessons from the Palmy fight, which was fucking cool. But this podcast isn't about all the little things that Sylvie does, which are fucking amazing. It's us trying to draw out the deepest thoughts about the Muay Thai that we experience and apply them like wide scale. Like ideally, you should enjoy this podcast even if you don't even know what Muay Thai is. Maybe it helps to know what Muay Thai is, but we really are going for the bigger ideas. So the first thing, we'll do the patron sponsor stuff a little bit later. But if you're new to the cast, we're going to cover many topics over probably several hours. If you're not into the topic we're discussing, you can jump ahead 20 minutes and we'll be on to another topic. And this is available on video for everybody on YouTube and also on iTunes for patrons. Patron is a pledge website that supports our content and Sylvie's fighting.
Monthly subscription.
Monthly subscription, yeah. So you can subscribe to Muay Thai Bones on iTunes and get this stuff on the way to the gym or wherever else you're traveling. Take it with you on the road. So the first thing we want to talk about was a Joe Rogan podcast that we both really loved with Machado, who has been Joe Rogan's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor for more than a decade, yeah. I think, yeah. And I listened to it first.
Yes.
I watched Joe Rogan on YouTube. You listen to him in podcast form.
It's like our podcast.
What?
Because you can listen to it or you can watch it.
Totally.
Double option.
And so I first listened to it and I just thought there were segments of it that were just really awesome. He was talking about old school Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the Gracie family in Rio in the late 80s and 90s. And a lot of the podcast was about how he felt that Jiu-Jitsu is changing generationally, and he's not a big fan of some of the changes that have come. Just first of all, I'm like, Sylvie, got to listen to this, and then you listen to it and you're like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah, the whole thing was, because Kevin made a video where he excerpted some stuff out that was related to how we think about Muay Thai and what we've seen in Muay Thai and how it's changed from the golden age to now, specifically in the clinch, but not necessarily only in the clinch. And the clinch is like grappling within the art of Muay Thai, so it makes sense that what he's talking about in Jiu-Jitsu would kind of translate that way. But so I'd seen the excerpts first,
Right.
and then I listened to the whole thing, and I was like, the whole thing is really good.
Well,
like,
first of all, what was your overall impression, and what made you excited about that podcast? So you guys can go, if you haven't watched it, you should go watch it. Like, why shouldn't people go see it or listen to it? I'm sorry to put you on the spot there.
Yeah, it's too big of a question. It's
Make it small.
the way he thinks about how you train.
Machado.
Yeah, which is not like this is how you should do it and this isn't. It's if you do it this way, these are the consequences. If you do it this way, these are the consequences, which I like. I don't like when people are like, you should do it like this only, because that's not how anything works.
Right.
But when you see the benefits to a way of training that in America specifically, we love to like shorten everything and like get a cheat or a hack or like, let's make this less time and more efficient. This whole like
which some of
peanut butter and jelly in one jar because it's so efficient
but
kind of
some
thing.
of that
like,
is also in America or in the West. A lot of times Muay Thai has to be fit into very small time windows.
you have an hour. Yep.
Yeah, and people work, then they want to get their instruction in or their work in, and so there are economic pressures that also make Muay Thai be taught in a certain way.
Yeah.
That, honestly, it's one of the great things about moving or coming to Thailand to train is that you get a very different time scale.
Right. That must be happening in Jiu-Jitsu as well. With,
Yeah, maybe that was an influence of what was going on.
You used to be a player and it was a little bit niche, and so it was like you really dedicated yourself to it, you had time, whatever, and then it becomes, and this is not meant to be super disparaging, but it becomes the like strip mall outlet, everyone has one. And it's, the training changes in order to accommodate the needs of the people who are there, but it has consequences for then how it's done and how it
It's funny that you
plays
mentioned
out.
a strip mall because that's exactly where Machado's gym is. And I told you this story a long time ago that when I was 13 years old, this is a little sidetrack, maybe 12 or something, 13 I think, my dad took me, I'm from Los Angeles, and he took me like way out in Tarzana to a strip mall gym, and it was, and some got karate class, and I was like, whatever. And we took this karate class, me and my sister, and it was totally embarrassing. We were in this whole class of kids, youth, and the instructor is like, raise your hand if you want to be a demo, like be in the demo. And nobody raised their hand. He's like, okay, everybody raise your hand. And everybody in the class kept their hand down because they knew, and me and my sister put our hands up because we were good students. And we got demoed on the first day. It was totally mortifying. But the awesome thing about the whole thing is the instructor was somebody I had no idea who he was. It was Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris.
Kevin got Chuck Norris.
I got Chuck Norris. And we didn't go out there.
If Chuck Norris tells you to raise your hand, don't do it.
Don't do it. So, I think we only went one more time or something. It was too far of a drive. But in the Joe Rogan podcast, Machado talks about how Chuck Norris was a student of Machado, and he eventually got tired of driving out to Hermosa Beach or to Redondo Beach or wherever, and he's like, I'm just going to give you my gym. And so Machado moved into this gym in the valley. So I don't know, you mentioning strip mall made me want to retell that little story about Chuck Norris's gym.
And people in California who know where all those places are.
That's true. But sometimes it's nice to drop little location names.
Yeah. On the 401.
Totally. But this is the weird thing, is that in strip malls, you sometimes find like gems of knowledge.
For sure.
Because they're not big commercial things. And the same thing happens in Thailand.
Yep.
You have some little corner stupid gym and they have a Raja champion.
Yeah, but to get back to what Machado was talking about.
Yeah.
He's talking about how Gracie, mostly he's talking about patience. But like you sit in this discomfort, you allow it to kind of develop slowly, and then you learn to start manipulating people so that it's like, he actually talks about this, and you should go watch the video, but he's like, if I want you to move left, I position my body so that your only option is to go left. I know this, but you don't know this. And
Well,
so you're
let's
basically
slow
playing
down.
someone into a position or into a direction that you want
Let's slow down.
so that they
Okay.
become predictable.
Okay.
This is so the opposite of being taught a combination, or you
Okay.
can't do that because then this
Let's
happens.
slow down. I want to unpack this. I don't want to go fast through it. You know how you're like Diesel Noi blast through everything in a private?
I am Diesel Noi.
You are Diesel Noi. You are Diesel Noi. Let's get to the... Okay,
A very small Diesel Noi.
because we're going to take our time a little bit with this, one of the exciting things that Machado talks about is learning flow. That it's not about learning abstract positions or submissions.
Or kata.
Well, yeah, or kata. That what characterized the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu of Rio and was idealized by Rickson Gracie, which the video is really talking about, and you have to watch it to get the full picture, is learning to stay in continuity and flow, right?
Yep.
And how do we get our heads around this whole thing? It's something that we've talked about in past podcasts and that Sylvie's talked about in technique vlogs. This is what really struck me was that he's talking about how in jiu-jitsu in the 90s, Rickson in particular practiced this jiu-jitsu of flow and continuity, and that it's being lost now.
Yeah.
He's like, in jiu-jitsu now, and I think he speaks specifically talking about jiu-jitsu of competitions, not necessarily MMA flavored jiu-jitsu. He's like, now people muscle every position. Now they explode for the submission over and over again, like, what? Try for a submission, try for a submission. That you're always trying for the finish. And he's like, no, no, no. You have got to learn the art of the transition. The transition is a position you take before the submission. And this reminded us very much about how Golden Age fighters of the 90s in Thailand, great Muay Thai fighters like Diesel Noi or Long Sawan, they almost all talk about how clinch has really changed in Thailand and that it's become much more power driven and much more muscular.
Yep.
And in the video edit that I put together, I showed half of a round of a fight between Chomong Pet and Long Sawan, two great Muay Thai fighters, both fighters of the year, and is just a relentless snake toil, unbroken by the ref,
Yep.
of just transition, 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 transition. And this is a aspect of Muay Thai that is lost now in
Yeah.
Thailand. Like,
Yeah.
we think Thailand has like the real Muay Thai, but just as Machado was talking about how Jiu-Jitsu no longer is reflecting this heavy transitional knowledge, the same thing is happening in Thailand with Thais, according to people of the Golden Age era.
Yeah, well, we just watched that Samson versus Pepsi.
Oh, yeah, another great fight.
It was the
we'll link
third
that.
time that they'd fought each other.
Yeah.
And the previous two had been draws. They're
Yeah.
not the same size. Samson is so much smaller than
Yeah.
Pepsi. I think he's much younger as well. But it's if you could watch clinching in a gym, how you just go for like 30, 45 minutes and it's just like this
Yeah.
endless thing. It's that, but it's a fight. And
Yeah.
it's just so relentless and the ref never breaks it and it just keeps changing. And the thing that Kevin's complaining about with me is that I throw people in order to get a break. And that's the going for the submission. Too fast, too early, muscling
let's
it.
not move. Let's give a little beat on those bones. I was watching you clinch with somebody. He was a kid, actually, a Westerner, and clearly somebody you're technically superior to and probably physically stronger than. And I was really struck by you'd clinch with him a little bit and then you would throw him. And I had this intuition that this throw was your way of taking a break. And I maybe a little bit concerned that I don't really go to your training very often. I'm like, maybe this is a pattern that you set up. And we're going to talk about this later in the podcast about fatigue training and training for many, like long hours, marathon training, and the habits it builds in you. But I was a little bit concerned that every day when you do your clinch, you do 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour of clinch a day, that you're using throws to end the exchange.
To take a
break,
yeah.
to take a breath. And it's not even a physical breath, it is, but it's a mental breath.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing that Golden Age Muay Thai clinch, and apparently Golden Age Jiu-Jitsu, Rio Jiu-Jitsu, was never about that. It was about staying in constant transition.
Yeah, so Machado, when he's talking about, is it Rickson?
Rickson.
He's talking about how he gives you like a riddle to solve. And then as you start edging towards the answer, he gives you another one. And so you're just constantly chasing this, trying to solve something rather than like solve the one thing and there's another position. This is like what you wanted me to do with that kid who I was clinching with.
Yes.
Is I have two very complicated positions to get out of. It's
in clinch, yeah.
In clinch.
They're locks.
One is the arm loop and one is the long clinch. And so Kevin's like, just go between the two of them over and over again. So you lock the arm and they struggle and they try to move and they start to solve it. You don't let them solve it, but they get close and then you just transition into the long clinch and they're like, fuck. Like, now I have to solve this.
Another puzzle,
and they start to solve it and you go back to the other one and the solution they had in the first place isn't working now and they lose faith in it and it's this whole like...
They have to resolve. And I like these two positions in the clinch. Maybe we somehow can link to them in the notes. But the idea is, the tendency is to find a lock that works in your gym, right? And you just specialize in it. And then you try to put that lock on somebody in a fight who might have the counter or might not.
Yeah.
And it helps if you do something like a lock that someone isn't commonly trained against, because then they don't know the counter. And by the time they figured out the counter, the fight's over and you've won. If you can get more than one lock like that, if you can get 3 locks and learn the discomfort of letting go of a secure position, like you're secure, you're gonna let go of a secure position and then move to another lock that now they have to solve, and then move to a third lock.
Yep.
Like Diesel and I taught you a little bit about that too, like moving arm loop on left side, arm loop right side.
Yeah.
That there's a bravery that consists of being able to let go of the trapeze bar.
Yep.
And
free fall for a second.
Free fall for a second, and then catch yourself in another lock.
Yep.
And I get this feeling like this is what Machado was talking about with Rickson, is that flow is about hitting these stable positions, but constantly also manipulating your opponent by doing so. It reminds me a little bit of rock climbing, freestyle rock climbing, where you have handholds, but you can't just get up the mountain by staying where you are.
Right.
You have got to learn how to like weight shift to the next handhold.
And you have to take a non-ideal handhold to get to a better handhold.
Yeah, you get to, sometimes there's a handhold that, and we're not experts in this at all, we just imagining. But sometimes there's a handhold that you couldn't hold for 30 seconds. But you can use it for 3 seconds to leverage to another.
Yeah.
And I think that's when the art form starts getting really high level.
Yeah.
Right? So I was thinking, I'm gonna read from the forum post I wrote to put some more like flesh on the bones here about what we're talking about. We've kind of covered some of it, but to really, I don't know, have a dinner theater moment. Let me see if there's a place I can pull over without us getting clobbered. And I don't want to make you read it. All right. All right. So where is that? Pardon me for a minute while I locate it. All right. as the traffic roars by. Mm-hmm. Oh, I think we can kill that. Wait.
Really?
Yeah.
I think for traffic safety, we should have one.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna risk it. All right. My foot is on the brake, so the lights are lit. So, time fighting. Machado in this video talks about how when you're on defense, it always takes a smaller amount of time to defend against an attack.
Because defense is closer.
He says defense is short. So that if someone extends their arm to you, all you have to do is pull your defense closer to your body. So every moment of attack is actually working out of a time deficit. It takes longer to attack to defend. So what he's really talking about is how offensive, how you can manipulate your opponent in a succession of moves to make up that time deficit. And I found this very fascinating. And this is why continuity and flow is so important to high-level fighting, because continuity and flow allows you to like eat up little tiny seconds, split seconds, so that eventually your opponent doesn't have enough time to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what, let me put my reading glasses on for a little bit of excitement. All right. In this very interesting sense, fighters are time fighting. And this is from the Muay Thai, the Roundtable forum post. You guys can go over and look at it if you like. When you attack, you are working from a time deficit. Your defending opponent has more time in the bank than you do, or it's much more temporally expensive to attack than it is to defend. An attacking opponent has a math problem. Now, a primary way of overcoming this time deficit is to present very hard to solve puzzles. Not only will this demand lots of resources for your opponent, the most valuable one of those resources would be time. If a puzzle takes a long time to solve, then you have overcome the time deficit. You can get a lot out of this in early developmental fighting. You've trained one thing that your opponent hasn't, you present a very difficult puzzle, you overcome the time deficit, you win. At higher level fighting between experienced opponents in the same rule set, most of the puzzles are known. Yes, some fighters might be better at solving certain kinds of puzzles, but seldom is it just one basic, too hard to solve puzzle. I think I read a little bit prematurely. This is how I read Machado, what Machado was saying about Rickson. What I draw from this, and I connect it to our study of legendary fighters. What Rickson was doing offensively was not presenting impossible singular puzzles. What he was doing was presenting a series of puzzles. He would present one, and then as you start to work on it, spending your time bank, he's presenting another, and then another. He isn't rushing through puzzles, he's in flow. He's in the tempo of his jiu-jitsu, transitioning. And as he moves, keeping his breath where he wants it, he's eating up the time deficit until, as Machado says, you don't have time to defend. You might very well be able to defend that last puzzle pretty easily, all things being equal, but things aren't equal. You are time fighting. Your breath is short, you are under duress of repeated puzzle solving, and you can feel the predictability of the world slipping away. By the time the last puzzle hits you, you don't have the resources to solve the problem. This is very akin to the Thailand aesthetic of dominance. You ideally don't want to beat the crap out of your opponent, although sometimes that happens. It's a very violent sport. Ideally, you want it to look like your opponent crumbled from within. This is achieved through time fighting, and time fighting is brought about by training in continuous flow and transition, not favoring abstract positional knowledge. Abstract knowledge is great if you aren't under time pressure, musing about the perfect move. Your body has millions of years of predatory and prey knowledge in its software, vastly capable of reading the patterns of time and space ambiguities. It has to learn to move through those patterns in continuous transition. Each and every time you call a break or a timeout, you're robbing yourself of the most vital and highly valued aspect of the fighting arts. The other half of what Rickson is doing, according to Machado, is that he's slowly, and this is what you were pointing to, is slowly guiding you into more and more predictable positions. While your ambiguity is going up, his is going down. He wants you to move left. Half the spatial possibilities have been cut down. Less ambiguity for him. In non-grappling situations, this is really essential to what Karuhat does. Karuhat taught you this and teaches. Continually put your opponent where you know they will be. When this happens, you can time travel or time hop. Your next puzzle is already waiting for them in the future, and they are occluded to it. They can't see it. What is really interesting about this is that none of it is hurried. Perhaps this is why they call BJJ human chess. You are checkmating 5 moves out, 10 moves out, 20 moves out. So that was my take on this, to give kind of like a more comprehensive, let me see about this. Reading of what we're saying and putting it all together. How do you respond to that about the things that you're trying to train yourself and your experiences in fights? Or do you have a feeling? Oh, it's so pretty out here. Wish you could see this. Have I lost
Ask me
you,
a more
baby?
specific question.
Okay, I can't. I'm disoriented.
Well,
Jump in somewhere, baby.
I gave the example of moving between these two positions so that someone is constantly trying to solve something. Earlier, I gave the example of Karuhat does this. He makes you block so that that position that you're in, you only have one option in it. And so he can punish that option. So he makes you really predictable, which allows him to have way more options than you at any given time, and it feels like he's reading your mind.
Yeah.
Because you're not like, I only have one option. You're like, I block. That's what you do.
Yeah. He's like, Karuhat, for instance, would have you like, he'll mid-kick you, and you'll block his kick, and mid-kick you, and you block his kick, and he's like, now I know you're going to be standing on one leg.
Yep.
And as soon as you're standing on one leg, it means you can't move left or right.
Right.
You're locked into a position, and you also have an open side.
Yep.
Where he can attack you.
Yep.
Where you have no guard. So now on his next feint or kick or anything, he's like, now I just pogo stick you. Like,
yeah. Or you're like, I can't block now. And then he's just kicking you.
What?
Like if you're punished on your block, then you stop blocking. Like,
yeah, you can get someone to disbelieve in something. Like every time I block, I get fucking hit.
Yeah.
And that is actually something that happened to you, or happened with you in your Jam Kwan fight. You guys can check out that fight. Jam Kwan does something that a lot of Thai fighters did. She's an incredible fighter, actually, where she was, you're both orthodox, and she was messing with your lead leg, teeping your lead leg, basically trying to like break your rhythm and timing. And you just started like pulling that leg back in a Karuhat type way, and then whacking her on the open side.
Yeah.
And you were punishing her for her, which
strategy.
is her strategy, but this is like a rhythmical part of her Muay.
Yep.
So when she loses faith in a habitual part of her Muay, all of her Muay starts to get disrupted. Then she can't start her stack, right?
Right. But you can't do it like all the people I've ever trained with for the Muay Thai library, when they show me something, they're like, you can't do the same thing all the time. Like you can't do that leg thing every time, because then they know that you're going to do that. You kind of have to like work it in so that they doubt what they're doing, rather than like, oh, I can solve that.
I actually didn't follow you at all. Are we adding another angle on this?
No, I guess I'm trying to reintroduce this idea of it's how you train with patience.
Oh.
Is that if you train every time they teep your leg, move it and kick them, and that's the only move you have, you've actually limited yourself, rather than like...
Okay, so you're arguing against punishing.
No, I'm talking about flow. I'm talking about flow, being able to alternate between as many options for yourself as possible while limiting the options of your opponent as much as possible.
Okay, so what you're really saying is don't memorize a counter to a counter, right?
Don't memorize this is the solution to that. but like this is an option for that, or this complicates that, or this is a puzzle for that.
Okay. I
So
feel
yes.
like we're going down a cul-de-sac.
Sure, what you said.
Okay, but how do we get back to the main maze?
I don't know.
Okay.
You bring it back. He's talking about how the way they used to train, which then presented itself in the way they used to fight. I don't know if you
Yeah.
call it a fight in jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
but
They would actually fight in the streets to test out their jiu-jitsu, so it was actual fights. Okay, we're lost here?
that constantly having to solve rather than like,
Okay, well, this is the thing. Is when you train clinch in Thailand 20 minutes, 30 minutes at a time, ideally what you want to push yourself towards are these long stretches of transitional experience where they really don't end. That if you get thrown, you just get up and grab.
yeah,
If you throw somebody, you don't walk around in a circle and take a break. You get up and grab. You're clinching for 30 minutes.
yeah,
Like what you really want to create is the intelligence, and it's a body intelligence. It's not a abstract intelligence of just constantly being able to adjust to positions of strength or weakness.
Yeah.
Right? It's like when you're learning to surf, you have to stand on the surfboard
yeah,
for hours.
yeah.
And you fall off and you fall off and you fall off, but you get right back on the surfboard. And that's what makes you a great surfer, is all the little connective tissue
yeah.
that's involved in not taking breaks.
Yeah, there's kind of a like weird false mentality that a submission or a moment of total dominance where you throw someone or something, that this is like game over. Whereas if you're rolling in your class or something and you get submitted 20 times in class, good, right? Like it keeps going. That was when I was training with Tonadette.
Oh yeah.
So I fought, and then I had a day off, and I clinched with Tonadette for an hour on that day, and then fought the next day. In that hour, it was physically grueling, but it was mentally, it was mental gymnastics more than anything. And I got into positions that were like game over.
Well, so
many,
everybody
many
knows.
times.
So everybody knows Tonadette is a master of the long clinch, a former stadium fighter. He's an incredible clinch fighter.
Yeah.
And so he's got, I don't know, 15 pounds on you, maybe?
Probably.
Yeah. So he's physically stronger than you, technically superior,
Yeah.
but he's really good to clinch with. Like, he's a very good, he sets the bar high. He doesn't give you easy stuff. He makes you work for everything, but he doesn't lock you out
Yeah.
of possibilities.
Yeah.
And so you spend an hour with him. We have a whole session of him teaching the long clinch in the Muay Thai library. Go check it out. But every time we go up to Chiang Mai, between fights, we like to give you an hour with him, because we want every hour, every month for you to have influence from his long clinch style. But explain why this is mentally grueling. The mental component of continually fighting through inferior positions, because he puts you in a lot of inferior positions.
I think the reason people see those submissions or like getting totally dominated as game over is that it's a way to take a break. Again, it's a way for you to take a break if you're the one dominating and you're like, I win.
Yeah.
But it's also a way for you to take a break when you're losing, when you're like, this is so awful, I just need a break. Like,
Yeah.
mentally, I need a pause.
Which is a kind of a tap out, like tapping out, right?
Yeah, which doesn't mean like it is a bad thing, but it's something that you need to learn to continually recover from. To basically, like in a video game, you can die and then just start right back up at like the beginning of the level or something. You don't want to use shutting someone out as a break, as a like, I win and now I win.
Right.
You want to shut people out over and over and over again, and you want to be shut out over and over and over again to learn how to solve it. you've said to me, because I used to get thrown a lot by my clinching partners at Petring
Because they were so big.
Yeah, and much better than me.
Yeah.
You're like, just let yourself be thrown, because then you
Yes.
learn balance. Then you learn how not to be thrown.
Totally.
You don't learn how not to be thrown by hating being thrown and trying to avoid it all the time. It's like,
Your body has to. I'm always of the opinion that every single human being on the planet is the inheritor of 100,000 years or more of predator-prey software that is able to read danger, space, time, like the whole virtual world of danger. That's 100,000 years of programming that everybody has inherited. But the way that a lot of times we approach fighting training, the dissemination of fight knowledge, is we do it all up here abstractly.
yeah,
And this abstraction machine, this computer up here, it's really good at some things. But moving through space in a predator-prey environment, turn that over to teaching the software of 100,000 years, because you will be able to perceive things far faster than your abstract mind will be able to.
totally.
And what I like,
Let me put a word and meaning and emotion to that. It's gonna
Totally.
take a minute. Just do it.
totally, it's like buffering.
Totally.
Buffering.
Totally.
So what I liked is that you're returning this back to training. Like that what you really are trying to do when you train is you're trying to get yourself into states that will whole cloth find themselves in your fights.
Yeah.
In fights, you're going to find an intensity and fear and pressure that just does not exist in training. But the reason why you do it in training with some pressure is you're baby stepping yourself up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, just to go down this little alleyway, you're quite aware of how you want to train. You want the golden age continuity. You want the flow. And Thailand is known for long periods, long session continuity clinch training.
Yeah.
But still, you've found ways, and your partners also have found ways of building in these breaks.
Yep.
So why does that creep in, or how does one overcome that? Because if it even happens to you in Thailand, where you're trying for it not to happen, how hard it is for someone to do in the West somewhere in a gym.
Do you want to launch into this, or should we start a new one?
I don't know. Do you feel like this is a different topic?
What is the thing Tim Noakes talks about like when you're running and your brain has this like
Oh, yeah. It's like the 10% or
what's it called? The general or the
governor?
The governor. Tim Noakes talks about the governor, which is this part of your brain or like just a thought that way before you're actually redlining, it's like your redlining stop. And it's the quit that you have.
But he said it was based on a time picture your mind will make of the task. So if you're running 10K, I think it's like 2/3 of the way done, your brain will start being like, you're too tired for this.
Right, which if you're running a 5K, it's still 2/3 of the way through.
It's still 2/3. If it's not 2/3, it's 90% or 70%. I don't know what the number is. If you're running 100 miles,
Yeah.
it's still 2/3 or whatever that is. That your mental picture of how long the event is going to be,
And how much you have to give to
and how much. So your mind does is it creates a fuel schedule.
Yep.
And it starts doing the flashing the red light alarm based on how far it thinks that you're gonna have to do to put the energy out.
Yeah.
So if you're starting to feel like time to quit 2/3 of the way through 60 seconds
Yeah.
instead of 2/3 of the way through 30 minutes,
Yeah.
how you frame what you're approaching will condition where you're hitting your red line.
Yeah. So I think it's
Mentally. That's really, really cool. So part of the problem maybe is when you're clinching, you're not thinking of a 20-minute scramble. You're thinking in terms of 45 seconds, 90 seconds.
Yeah, I will say that there have been times, like before you start clinching, usually Pinu's like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, like he'll tell you what it is. But there have been times when I'm like, how long? And he's like, I'll tell you when to stop. If you don't know, you can't calculate out where
but
the
then
like,
there's that
line is.
weird habit of the brain, because the brain creates patterns in order out of non-order, where you're like, okay, well then now my time frame is a clinch exchange, which ends when you get thrown.
Yeah.
Or when you get into an impossible position. So now you're thinking just in terms of 2 minutes at a time.
Well, I guess you have to kind of change what it is that you think you're working on, so that instead of throwing someone to get a break to like, okay, now I can breathe for a second, or mentally I can have a moment, it's you make the task extending your ability to hold your breath. So you're like, I want this exchange to go longer than the last one.
Yeah.
Like make the point, the extension of the exchange rather than...
And this will lead into a subject we're going to cover in a little bit, what we're calling Orca, right? I'll say this also in reference to what you're saying, which is kind of interesting. In that Chungmung Pet Long Swan fight, that round that I put up, it's really, really interesting. Long Swan is known as one of the most relentless knee fighters ever. Like Karuhat and Gansak, two of the greatest femur fighters, were like, I hated fighting Long Swan.
When I was like, who was the worst to fight, both of them didn't even take a breath. They were like, Long Swan.
Long Swan.
Separate from each other.
And Long Swan's in the Muay Thai library. You want to see why he was like that? Check out that session. But he's known for his relentlessness. What's so interesting, there's a little moment in that round. They are just going. Chungmung Pet, going. Chungmung Pet is from Diesel Noise Gym, so two, like, relentless things. There's a moment where Long Swan disengages from the clinch to catch a breath. And it's a mental breath.
Yep.
Because you know he could go for an hour if he needed to. But he pushes off in the clinch, which is something he never does. And this is something that's very interesting to me. Everyone has their breaking point.
Yeah.
Like, what the point of training this continuity is you want your breaking point to be 20 minutes out, not 30 seconds out.
Yeah.
And so that when you get engaged with somebody in the ring, all you have to do is move them past where they're expecting the break.
Yeah.
And once you do, even if they're very skilled and very conditioned, when you move them past the metronome of this is the end of the cycle, this is when I normally reset, this is when a throw happens, you'll watch them just melt.
Yeah.
Like a very skilled fighter. And that was actually happening in your Nang Hong fight when you started pushing her in the 4th round. She was doing very well against you. It looked like she has like 10 kilos on you or something. But she was using her weight well. And you just continued the clinch a little bit longer, and the next thing you knew, you had her head down in the ropes.
Yep.
But you keep looking down on this.
I'm worried about this battery.
Are you?
Yeah.
What's the battery
It's not on here. I can see it on here. It's very, very low, and we're at.
Okay, well, let's take a break. Right?
Okay.
Rolling?
We're back.
Okay. Next subject, but I just want to tail off or round off the last little subject, which is the two things to summarize about training, smart training approaches are, well, this little dog is like running along the road. Try to build time frames in clinch and maybe in sparring as well that are longer form, that are what you really want to do is adjust over 20 minutes and not just brief exchanges, right? You want to refrain from creating small time frame exchanges, which create small like needing to take breaks and reset over and over and over again, right? You want to resist resetting.
Yep.
And there's lots of hidden ways that resetting gets into pad work, gets into bag work, right?
Yep.
And then, is there any other summation that we came out of that? Any bit of wisdom about what to bring to training, or we're talking about this you're going to bring into training for yourself? Like, how are you going to bring this? We run into this idea every now and then we lose focus on it, and then you recapture focus on it.
Yeah, I think it's just the overall pursuit of continuity in everything, which is like, it's not trying to get to the knockout or the power shot or the like, oh, I did that one thing. It's everything connecting in and out of, like, it's like a perpetual motion machine or something.
And I don't want to zoom too far out, but what comes to my mind when you're talking about this continuity really connects up with very big ideas in Buddhism. You practice Vipassana meditation, which is a kind of like self-awareness. It's not breathing oriented, it's more self-observational stuff. But one of the big concepts of Buddhism is all of life is suffering, right? And all you're really doing in life is adjusting from one position of suffering to another, right?
You never solve suffering.
You never fix suffering. You never stop suffering.
Yeah.
You can be under the illusion that you've stopped it, but you never can. And this goes back to what we were in the last Muay Thai Bones podcast, which is square oneism, which is you never graduate out of having to return to solve the fundamental thing that you started solving in the very beginning, right? You never put an end to it.
Yeah.
And there is an emotional maturity that comes from accepting that there will be no end.
Yeah.
And in training, when you pursue that continuity and you eschew the desire to create a break, a mental break, like, oh, I just threw you, I just won that, a timeout of some kind, or, oh, something bad just happened, I'm gonna take a moment to say how much I suck to myself, right? Then when you have an emotional maturity to accept that it's just a continuity that you're pursuing, I don't know, that has things that go well beyond the gym.
Yeah.
Nothing to add to that. This is like very meaningful to you, I think. This is what you're doing in your own life. I can feel the changes. Like, baby, you were down from the Palami fight, and it just was getting like a deeper valley, and you just took hold of it and like reversed it. Or I don't know what the right description is of what you did, but the next day you like climbed out of it. One can only do that in continuity, like with the practice of being exposed to negative moments and then being able to respond to them.
Yeah.
Like what we're talking about in training, like getting into a negative moment or a positive moment, it's what the next moment is.
Well, there's this,
like, it's very big stuff. This is
it's
huge
the same
stuff.
thing of the square oneism where you never solve anything. And on our drive up to Chiang Mai from Bangkok, we hit a bunch of rainstorms, like 6 or something. Like we just kept driving into them.
Yeah.
And there's actually a saying in Thai that when it rains, it's not the whole sky. It's kind of this like, don't worry, like it's not everything is shit kind of thing. And that's the thing about how I was feeling after my loss and my performance or whatever the thing is like, you're gonna hit another rainstorm. So don't be so upset about being wet. Like, there's no like, why do I still think these thoughts? I did my 5 minutes of meditation in the morning. I shouldn't think these thoughts anymore.
Yeah.
You're gonna keep thinking the thoughts. You're gonna have sorrow in your life. You're gonna have struggle and suffering. Like, there's never like, oh, I don't have those things anymore. Like, I'm beyond that. It never fucking happens.
Yeah.
The disappointment in a fight never goes away. You look at McGregor and he's such an asshole. You're like, that dude's confidence is never shaken. Of course it is. Like, of course he has terrible thoughts about himself as well. But the way that he is like, next storm, next storm, next storm, allows him to have a different appearance than what he's actually feeling. And I think that in my process of, okay, this feeling is really shitty, but I have to get back in the ring, like, get back in the ring, is this, like, you never solve any of it. It's never solved.
But this is, I connect these very big life lessons to how you train just in sparring, or just in clinch, or even on pad work. It's like, you cannot chunk a single exchange and draw meaning out of it, and then train timeout reflection. Like, by training the continuity of moving between bad positions, good positions, great positions, awful positions, you gain a mental flexibility that actually, like you said, a very cool thing about Karuhat's style. I think it was Karuhat's style. Like, it's not like Karuhat never gets hit.
Yeah.
He just looks like he never gets hit.
Yeah.
Because when he gets hit in training, his balance is such that it almost looks like it's on purpose, or it has a meaning within his Muay.
Yeah.
Right? That's something you have to train in training.
It's green.
You can't just fake it.
Yeah.
Right? I think chunking, like, win-loss situations, like, I won that exchange, I lost that exchange. I don't know what this guy's doing.
Chunking
gives you a disservice. It's a disservice to yourself, because you're robbing yourself of all of those, like, connective tissues that allow you to rebalance yourself after a great moment or after a bad moment. That every time you call the timeout and you go end scene, you're losing something that really is what lifts you in life.
Yeah.
Right? In life, there is no end scene.
Well, that's the thing about fighting too, is that if you give meaning to the entire fight, and then this means something about you, it's actually not that different from 20 seconds within the 3 hours that you were training. Like,
totally.
It's that soccer thing that after the game is before the game. Like,
I don't know what that is.
It's in German.
Well, don't make it a secret.
After the game is before the game. It basically means, like, there's always the next one. So, like, the second a game ends, it's before the next game. So you have to continue on in, like, solving the same things, or...
To me, this is where the art and the sport becomes metaphysical and beautiful in life. And this is one of the beautiful things about... We're going to talk a little bit about fighting a lot later in the podcast, but one of the beautiful things about Thailand, where there are very high fight numbers, because there's so much fighting, and the ability, and Sylvie honestly fights more than anybody ever has. We take advantage of that opportunity here and make the most of it. But even the average person fights much more in Thailand than they do elsewhere. It allows you to constantly dip into that pool of renewal in a certain way. Like, I was thinking to myself after your Palmy loss, I'm like, I feel very bad for a Westerner who would have that fight. It was not a bad fight, but it was frustrating, and it was hitting you in a vulnerable spot. To have to live with that fight for 4 more months or 6 more months before you fight again would be a nightmare, like a very, very heavy lifting. Yeah. Right? And maybe there's some benefit to have to, like, sit in that and work through it for 6 months, but it feels much better to just keep swimming. Yeah. And then you got in the ring and you had just a beautiful... I loved your performance against Nang Hong. not as a like technical thing, as a mental capacity. It's very beautiful. We got sidetracked a little bit. What's our time on this? We're doing okay?
It's 11 minutes.
Okay. We're going to talk about, it's following on this continuity thing when we were talking about, right? It's something we started calling Orca. Orca, the killer whale, right?
Yes.
We watched a few, was it a few?
Just one.
One documentary? Well, I watched a bunch looking for one. I like watched a lot of clips. I've always been drawn to the orca animal, the totem animal kind of, just because the orca is so superior to its environment. It's the ultimate apex predator in that it's physically superior to pretty much everything else in the sea. They literally hunt great white sharks. Great white sharks for their liver. They like hunt them down, attack them, stun them, reportedly even drown them, and then they just suck out the liver.
And then they're done.
Yeah. Like, physically, they are physically dominant over their prey and everything else in the sea. And then mentally, they're probably the smartest, if not one of the smartest, if not the smartest, most highly intelligent animal in the sea also. So they're not only physically dominant, but they're also mentally dominant over their environment. And so this freedom in your environment is a very cool metaphor to take as a goal as a fighter in the ring.
So what does that mean for a fighter?
Well, let's take it this way.
Because people are going to be like, I'm unbeatable, and that's the like...
Yeah, it's not...
It's not that.
Well, the orcas don't really act unbeatable.
Yeah.
They just are unbeatable. But where am I going with this? We were talking about continuity, and there's this terrible footage that you'll see on YouTube of orcas with seals, right? I feel like I'm just talking, baby, and you're just nodding, actually.
Well, I'm waiting for you to get to the...
You take us there.
No.
No, it's too much.
I can't.
Okay.
I hate watching footage of killer whales flipping seals into the air and like playing with their food. It's like when cats are playing with the mouse or whatever. It feels really cruel and like...
And seals are the cutest things in the world, too.
They're just so floppy when they get like thrown into the air. And so it's hard to look at that as something that you're like, yeah, I want to be like that. But there's also interpretation to that kind of behavior of like what is actually happening when they're playing with their food like that. And you would never think of an animal as practicing hunting or like practicing killing.
Killer whales are known to practice hunting and playing with their food, and sometimes they won't even kill it.
Yeah.
They'll just play with it for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
For those listening on the podcast, Sylvie's making a disgusted
because
face.
It probably does not just swim off and be fine after being fucking flipped around.
The animal world's a kind of a harsh world, right?
It's terrible, yeah.
Right. Where are we getting to? The way that killer whales toss seals around is the kind of physical dominance that maybe is worth being pursued in clinch. That right when we started looking at killer whales closely, and I started reading up on this, was right when we realized that you throw people in training to take a break.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't throw them to the ground. Instead of throwing them to the ground, just tip them over, knee them, catch them before they hit the ground, move them into another position.
Yep.
Like, literally kind of
Play with your
play
food.
with your food in a certain regard.
Yeah.
But there's a real thing here. Killer whales are supreme hunters because they play.
Yeah.
And playing is a major part of Thailand style training. And I'm like, if you're working with somebody who you're just better than, like it happens sometimes, this is a time to start playing with your food. Not in a mean way, but in a way of like building all that continuity and balance that you want to have against a more difficult opponent.
There's like the word that keeps coming to mind is ethical, but it's not ethical. There's like a value difference between what you're talking about in the like playing with your food, tip them, instead of the like finishing move kind of thing. And then this thing that we've also seen from Western fighters where they like pull something and have this like coulda got you. And it's like just fucking throw the shot. Like, don't play the coulda got you game.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between these things.
Okay, well, expand on that a little bit, like unpack it so we get some detail. Because you're drawn to it.
Well, it kind of goes into something that we were talking about, the two of us, earlier, which is Westerners try to play this like I'm so Thai game. And so they have this like, oh, it's so relaxed, like we're fine, touch gloves, like keeping everything in the fight, the kind of like...
You're talking about in a fight.
In a fight.
Yeah.
Keeping it in a way that you actually do want in training, which is the dominance is real, but the like killer instinct isn't. You're not hurting people.
Right, in training.
But they put it in the fight as though this is really Thai.
Right.
And it's not the same thing. So we watched this Western fighter many, many years ago who like would not really throw the shot, but then perform this like coulda got you, I spared you by not throwing it.
In a fight.
But it was also not like his dominance was not so real that he actually could have thrown it. It's like just fucking throw it. Like it was not. It was almost like the fear of escalation. Like he wouldn't throw it for real because he actually didn't have the confidence behind it to have the opponent come back at him. And so it's like, let's keep this really light. Like, let's keep this really easy. Which is not the same thing as, yes, I could completely flip you to the ground, but I'm gonna like turn you, you're off balance. Oh, now you're off balance this way. Like,
yeah, but I'm saying don't tip them and then tip them some other way, and I could throw you, and I'm saying tip them and then knee them.
Yes.
Score.
Yes.
Then turn them, drag them. Don't throw them to the ground. Tip them, score. Like, and in training, it's a pantomime score. This, and I don't mean to be critical about this, but this has been a huge problem, in my opinion, of Loma in IFMA fights. Loma is probably, well, she's probably the best clinch fighter. She's not really a clinch fighter, she's a throwing fighter, but the best clinch female fighter in the world. A Thai. She's now in MMA at Tiger. But she has the ability to basically throw her opponent 5 or 6 times. And if the opponent, in a fight, and if the opponent's not aware of what's going on, it could be 15 times. She has a spectacular timing on 1 or 2 throws that she just is relentless with. The problem is that throws are not scored highly by IFMA. Maybe they technically are, but in reality, in fights, she loses fights where she's dominant in throws. And I'm like, just don't throw them to the ground.
Score.
If she would pull, she like has a beautiful pulling throw. If she would pull and then step back and not bring them to the ground, just knee the solar plexus, she honestly would knock people out or score so highly nobody would ever be able to catch up. Like, she has the ability to off balance you in an embarrassing way with half throws that she could just play with her food like an orca. Like, she could just play. But because she's so conditioned and because throws are so highly scored in Thailand's Muay Thai, she's conditioned that she can just kind of like counter kick in a Thai fight, play a light strategic fight, and then throw you 3 times, and then the fight's over in Thailand. You can't fight like that at IFMA because you have no control over whether they're going to score or throw well.
Right.
Like, it's not consistent. It's the same. What I'm telling you is the same thing. Is like, and she probably uses throws to create breaks for herself mentally. Like, I just won that round.
Right.
Right.
But so the totem Orca energy
is this continual play and recapture, play, recapture, play, recapture. It's the recapture, it's the recapture, which goes back to the continuity that we were talking about with flow. Because you recapture and knee, and then let your prey kind of like swim away a little bit, recapture, knee, recapture. Where you can get a throw, you can also get a very big high-scoring knee instead, right?
Yeah.
Because in Thailand, one of the biggest obstacles you have as a fighter is the clinch break, like the ref breaking the clinch. You want to go into a please stop. You want there to be as few breaks as possible.
Yeah.
Even a throw in a fight is a break.
Yeah.
When you throw somebody in a clinch exchange, you do get a point, and often a good size point in Thai scoring, but you only get that 1 point.
Yeah, there's also, Krunu has complained about this, of like, if you try to throw someone, like you try to have this big power move, and either they don't go down,
right,
that makes you look really bad,
right,
or the ref actually sometimes catches them.
Yes, yes.
And then the ref has made them not go down,
yes,
but it still looks bad for you.
Yes.
Whereas if you had just off-balanced a knee, or
yes,
like...
You want that continuity, so instead of taking the full point of the throw, you take the minor point of the off balance and the pretty significant point of the knee, and then the continuity of recapturing your food, continuing to work them. You can throw at the end of 5 or 6 recaptures, but don't throw right away. And I think that this is something that needs to be, it's a kind of like, part of it is a little bit this part of the Orca mentality is trying to get so superior to your opponent that you can play with your food, instead of being so stressed that you're not going to win the exchange. Why are you laughing? What?
Because the like beast mode is such a stressed mode.
What's the beast
People
mode?
who are like, I'm gonna be a killer, I'm gonna go in there and just smash him and knock him out, whatever. It's like, dude, you're so scared and tense. Like, beast mode is so stressed, whereas the like
Orca
playing
mode
with your food or whatever is not stressed. Like,
it's not stressed.
It's not stressed.
But
and it's brutal. It's very fucking brutal.
It's brutal in a different way, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of, well, it is Femur, and it's what Femur is, but it's the Muay Thai version of it. Femur is, I'm not stressed and I can juggle you with teeps, right?
Yeah.
Or I can constantly juggle you with space by moving away and counter kicking. As a Muay Thai fighter, if you get positions where you can make turns or throws, the fact that you can play with your food by continuity, tip, knee, release, catch. Like some of the times, like Diesel Noi is telling you, like push off, low kick,
Yeah.
recapture,
Yeah.
like catch and release.
In order to keep the ref from breaking you, which is a reset. So instead of resetting, you're like carrying on. But this is a little bit like what we were talking about in the coffee shop.
Okay.
Which is like, there's like if you cut someone, like you give them a small cut and then you keep trying to hit the cut to open it to like they're gonna bleed more and more and more. It's not a like you hit them once and now you're going for the like I'm gonna hit it so hard. You keep tapping it to try to open it. And my version of that is fatigue, which is when you see your opponent starting to give. Because everyone has it. I'm a fucking cardio monster. I have a line. You see that little piece of fatigue or that piece of doubt or that like, I don't know if I can reach that deep into myself. And you hit it. Like you keep tapping it to try to open it up. It's this little like the mouth gets wider and wider kind of thing. And that's like playing with your food because you have to know how to nudge that person rather than like I'm gonna burn my tank because that'll mean you're burning your tank. And then you're both done. We watched a fight of one of my teammates at Rajadamnern where if he had just pushed for like 14 seconds at the right moment, he would have killed this guy. But instead it just like stretched into a blowout for the other guy.
Okay, but it just seems like you argued against yourself.
No, it's because if he had practiced seeing that moment of fatigue and tapping on it instead of I better reserve myself to be able to like get some big knockout moment later. It's like no, you just nudge it, play with it, like.
And I think in those situations when you see that fatigue building, throwing somebody to the ground is a big mistake because you only get so much out of it. The opponent then gets to stand up, straighten their shorts, catch their breath for a second. Whereas if you had just kind of like extended it out, play with your food a little bit. Once somebody starts to redline, the melting of their facade can happen really rapidly. Like they start to redline and they've got like maybe 10 or 15 seconds of composure still there. If you can get them past that next level, they can suddenly be done. Like, now I'm ready to go. Right?
I don't want to keep doing this.
You just have to walk them a little further down the line. And I just think like, I also think that with we had a overheating camera, so we had to take a quick break. Finishing up on the Orca segment, I was just thinking to myself, this playing with the food, I really liked how you were contrasting Orca to beast mode. Why does that make you laugh every time? Is beast mode funny to you?
Beast mode's pretty funny.
Well, why?
Because it's so tense, because it's so counter.
What is beast mode? I'm gonna smash like you. Is this something you do or other people do?
Other people talk about it.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of people who adopt it verbally, but maybe even not even in their fighting, like they get it from their coach or something, and it's just like you gotta like turn into the killer in the ring or whatever. And a lot of people, it's counter to how they feel they are, and so they kind of do the alter ego kind of thing or whatever. I actually was thinking about Pri.
Oh yeah?
Pri came to the Muay Thai Summit in December, and they're a really, really sweet person who absolutely, when I was clinching with Pri, there was a like, oh fuck, in a couple of moments when they really get going. Pri is totally the kind of person who would be told by a coach you have to get into beast mode because Pri's sweet disposition does not go in the ring. And there's no connection there, and so it just would make you really tense. I would be really tense if I had to go into beast mode. My slightly pissed off thing is not beast mode.
Right.
But it's kind of, Kevin and I have this joke about the like mental monkey wrench.
Oh yeah.
It's a monkey mind with a wrench, and anything that you're like obsessing about or like, why do I do this or what do I need to do? The monkey's like, let me just tighten that up for you. It never helps.
Yeah.
There are people who are very successful in what we would call beast mode.
Right.
I don't think they would call it that. the people for whom that's actually a thing.
Maybe Mike Tyson or something.
I don't
like
know,
that.
perhaps. And they do really well. But they're not tense in their beast mode.
Well, they're tense explosive, maybe, or something like that. But this is what the Orca, play with your food, is a different kind of dominance than beast mode. It is not totally relaxed. It's relaxed awake.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like that thing that
It's alert.
yeah, that people talk about, like alpha dog, like the alpha in a pack, doesn't really act like an animal that's alpha. Doesn't really act the way that human beings act when they claim to be alpha. Like alpha animals are not always like putting people in their place, right?
Yeah.
Those are like the lieutenants that are worried about their place in the hierarchy, but the alpha actually is usually pretty calm and dominant. And I think that's kind of one of the interesting things about Orca and playing with your food is if you really take this as a training, like a lot of what we're talking about is doing something in training so that it becomes a fabric of who you are in the ring. This continuity of like trying to play with your food instead of just to win the exchange. Like to win the exchange is a kind of desperate aim. It's like to win a small thing. To play with your food is a totally different thing.
Yes.
Right? And I was thinking to myself, like, that's really what we're talking about. You hear me all the time in fights tell Sylvie, drag her off the ropes, drag her off the ropes. The Thai female fighter always wants to get back to the rope when you're clinching her so she can lean into the rope and act like you're not affecting her, and then the ref will come and break you. One reason why we want Sylvie to drag her opponent off the ropes is so she can play with her food. It makes the opponent have to defend kind of 360 degrees of balance because they don't have the rope supporting them. And when they're in the middle of the ring, Sylvie, if she can get her arms in the frame, now can move her opponent in any direction. She can push, pull, diagonal, attack lower body, upper body, and produce that continuity that will eventually break them down physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And then lead to a huge knee.
Yeah.
Right? And
It's the clinch version of a striker who can be like pop, 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 nail. It's just like
I'm amazed. I've never really thought about it, but it really is the same kind of thing as a striker who's like jab, jab, jab.
Rambo with those
body
fucking
jab,
leg kicks.
or Rambaugh's low kicks.
Yeah.
Stinging, little stinging things, and then suddenly you're behind. You cannot defend the big shot, and then the big shot comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess if anything else we're talking about bringing these values and tempos to training. So as we're on this, I want to talk about another aspect of training tempo. We're going to be on we're on a training tempo marathon. What are those things Jerry Lewis used to do? Telethon. So one of the things we realized that was Sylvie, I honestly don't know if there's anybody who has trained like Sylvie for 7 years in Thailand. Even Thais that train at fucking relentless levels, they do it in seasons.
Yeah.
Right?
Cycles.
There's lots of off and then on. Off and then on. And we took approach from the very beginning, it's gonna be mostly on. And in the last year, we've started creating some more off time, like sleep days, more watching sleep. Obviously,
Tracking rest.
What?
Tracking rest.
Tracking rest, active rest, getting more massage, more meditation time. But largely, Sylvie has been training in the Thai style, but without the off seasons that Thai fighters take. Like Thai fighters take time off after fights, right? Sylvie's back right away. One of the hidden drawbacks we've found in the relentless training that Sylvie puts herself under is that you're always running a marathon, every day.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the things we noticed was when you're running a marathon every day, you learn secret ways of sipping at rest and break,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Which is not a bad thing all the time. Like learning how to breathe while doing something so that you can maintain that thing is not a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing.
But
Well, what are we heading towards here? Like,
learning habits that keep you from ever redlining is bad.
yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago you realized I train not to get tired because I'm always tired.
Yeah.
And you had developed accidentally a fear of being tired.
Yeah.
I remember asking you, why don't you push hard in fights? This was 2 years ago. And you're like, I'm afraid of getting tired, which is so weird.
Crazy.
Because you're always so tired.
And also because I have never been more tired than my opponent in any of my 248 fights, ever.
No. But these are unconscious habits. A lot of what we're talking about is unconscious habits in a training regimen over time. You had developed 2 years ago this kind of like cruise control, making sure that you never burned your red line. And it actually had, because of how hard you were training, you had lost confidence in your cardio.
Yeah.
Even though you had incredible cardio. The emotional state. If you don't believe in your cardio, it doesn't matter how good your cardio is, you're never gonna tap into that.
Yeah, it's like how maybe with like powerlifting or something, like training to failure has a benefit. Like failure has a benefit.
Yeah.
Instead of like, well, I know I can do 12.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because tomorrow maybe you can't do 12 at that weight.
Yeah.
Right? But you want to train to failure. You want to experience that line.
So we had noticed that this kind of like unconscious, like, don't train to failure, what had somehow crept in over many months, if not years, because of how long you were training. Like 3-hour sessions, grueling pads on
Multiple gyms.
Multiple gyms. You were training at more than one gym, like, and each gym treated your session like the only session of the day.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they didn't even know you had another session.
Yeah.
And so you had built in these cushions, and this is a problem, because if you have this great cardio, but you've emotionally conditioned yourself never to explore it to failure, then when it's time to hit the gas in the ring, like in a time in a round or in a time in a fight, you can't hit the gas.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the belief that you can recover from failure, right?
And it's actually not about where the line of failure is. It's about the recovery itself.
Right? Unpack that a little bit, or what do you mean by that?
Like, there's this Russian dude at the gym right now who, the first time he came, he like couldn't make it through one round with Pinu, which Pinu's very hard, but like he couldn't get through a round. And Pinu was very patient with him. He'd let him like wheeze and lean against the ropes and all these things. And it was like he had gone to ninja camp. Within like a week or two, he was totally like, his cardio just got significantly better. Then he went home for a while. And when he came back, he was back at that like, I cannot do 40 seconds at a time. There are people who come who have that experience who are like, okay, I'm not going to do 3 rounds. And they like stop because they're like, I have to wait until my cardio is better to do the 3 rounds. And you're like, no, your cardio gets better by you doing the 3 rounds. He, while he's making everyone take a break for him so that he can just get through the rounds, he gets better quickly. And so what's incredible about him is not like, oh my God, I can't believe he can't even get through a round, is that he has to recover 4 times during a round. Okay. And that cycle of recovery gets shorter and shorter and shorter. Okay. Which I'm not doing.
So you're saying a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure what you're
saying
criticizing.
That even though you'd be like, by the way he's doing it, he's totally out of shape. because he has to recover and keep going all the time, his red line, even though I can do 3 rounds that are fucking hard, and I'm recovering all the time too, but I can get through them, because his recovery is harder than mine, his training is actually better than mine. It's like he's changing
in
things.
that section, because he is exploring his red line and building the ability to recover and the confidence you can recover.
Like if I could find, I don't even know, if I could find where my level is, where I have to be like, give me a second to be new. I have never had the audacity to make him give me a second. I'm too afraid of it.
Totally.
But if I could find that, I don't even know where that is. Like I don't know where that line is.
Yes, but you need to find it.
That's what I'm saying.
And then you need to find it to the way where you can then go do that in a fight. Like take somebody to deep water.
Yeah.
Because when you fight, like one of the problems you encountered in the John Kwan fight and then the Palmy fight was you're like not even breathing hard. And you have this huge gas tank. And part of it is you're just exploring relaxation, like as a fighting technique to be relaxed. But what we're looking for is how to be relaxed, but tempoed in such a way that you're expanding your cardio attack.
Yeah.
Like in a relaxed, relentless way.
Yeah.
So that you are breathing hard. You are having to recover. And at certain moments in the fight, you redline it, knowing that all you have to do is teep 3 or 4 times after and you'll be recovered.
Yeah.
Right? That failure recovery is a big part of fighting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't explore the other side of failure, so they spend all the time keeping away from it. And if anybody pushes them to it, there's no experience on the other side, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we were talking about was related to the Long Swan 1000. When you were doing 1,000 knees and 1,000 teeps every session, recommended by Long Swan, who we talked about earlier, part of it is like, how do you maintain the attack energy when you're doing something that is grueling and long? Like, you don't want to do 1,000 teeps like mush teeps.
Yeah.
It's hard to do 1,000 mush teeps. You want to do 1,000 attack energy teeps.
Yeah, so
And it's very hard to lose that.
The other side of that, which actually Long Swan was not doing mush knees, like Long Swan does like hard knees, and he talked about building up to it when you're getting ready for a fight, so like each day you're increasing.
Yeah.
Diesel Noy has me do these burns in the corner of knees that are like really high, and he's always telling me higher and faster and like just fucking rip
so
it.
So these are you go into the corner, you grab the corners of the rope, right?
Yeah.
And you basically just drive your knees alternately up, and
like,
sometimes the same knee.
Like ridiculously high, like I'm kneeing my own face kind of thing.
Yeah, vertical driving high knees.
And Diesel Noy will come over and yell at me and slap me and be like higher, faster, like kill it. And the thing that I had to learn was I was doing sets of 100 because I'm trying to get 300 of them. So you do set of 100. If I did them the way he wanted me to do them, I can do like 60. And then some days I can do like 40.
Well, we tried this, right?
The moral of that story is do 40 if you do them hard, instead of like having to pull it down to get to 100. Like, then I went and had that fight, and Diesel Noy was like, your knees were faster and higher, and the reason for that is because of the knees you've been doing in the corner. And if I had been doing 300 of them in the like mush knee way, they wouldn't be that way.
I mean, there's things to gain out of repetitious stuff, right? But one of the dangers of long, exhaustive training is that you build in safety parameters that keep you from the experience of failure.
Yeah, but it's like a dimmer switch where you have to understand. It's like how I was saying, I have to change my mindset from I can throw you at any time to I'm going to make this exchange last longer each time, because you're learning to hold your breath underwater more instead of like bobbing up and down.
Right.
Is that instead of I'm going to do 300 of them, it might take me an hour to do 300 of them the way I'm supposed to be doing them. But the dimmer switch is wherever your exhaustion is, go there. It's not, you know, hold out so that you can get that.
Why do you call it a dimmer switch?
Because it changes. It's not a light switch where you're either going hard or soft.
But
it's like
dimmer means you're turning it down. You're saying turn it up.
Up or down.
You're saying turn it up.
Yeah, a dimmer switch just has gradation rather than it being off or on.
Yeah, but you're saying go up.
Yeah,
right? Go
and so
to your limit.
some days it's 60, some days it's 40.
Well, we had you try to burn your diesel knees as a change, and you did. What did you do? 70 and then 40.
Yeah, some days were 70 and some were 40.
Yeah. Part of it is, for Diesel Noi, is he's very focused on, when he's training people, their recovery.
Yes. Yep.
He's not only like kill it in the pads, smash it, but if you watch him in the gym, he's even more focused on your recovery. Not only how do you stand, your posture, like do not show fatigue, but he's also like, have invigorated recovery.
Yeah.
Right? He's like massaging you. He's like getting you, like part of what Diesel Noi was as a great fighter, and maybe the greatest ever, was not only his ability to like viciously turn it on, but also after. He's composed after.
Yeah.
And he recovers from what he just did. Well, you can't.
There's a video that's maybe the most famous video of him, and there's very little video of him on YouTube that's an open workout where he is just shredding his pad holder.
Yeah.
And it's horrifying to watch. Like, if you picture yourself being the pad holder, you're like, man, that guy's job is rough. The thing about what I've seen in the gym from Diesel Noi and bringing him in and his recovery thing, what's horrifying if you're his opponent is he's going to do that next round too.
Yeah.
It's not like...
Or in the latter half of the round.
Yeah.
Like he just did it to you in the corner, and then another minute you're going to be in the same position again. Yeah. But this is because he can recover from his red line, and he's willing to drag you to his red line.
Because he's seen it. He's been in his red line.
Yeah.
When he talks about Muay Thai style, something I've helped in a lot of his private sessions, so this is something that I translate and relay to people a lot. He says it a lot. Is that of all the styles of Muay Thai, Muay Thai is the most tired. Muay Thai has to train the most tired all the time. And it's this like, you must know fatigue in order to not be afraid of it or to shy away from it or like any of these things. Like you just dive
I'm very
into
curious because I'm not the athlete, you are. You've spent a lot of time in fatigue, and one of the coolest things has been watching you come home in the last like 10 days or so, whatever you're doing in the gym, you're coming home like the dog that's been running around in the woods and comes home with the like tongue hanging out. You know the look I'm talking about.
Yeah, and then I make it 10 minutes
and then where's the water bowl and you're like and you sleep well.
Yeah.
I've seen you come home very tired for like years.
Yep.
This kind of tired was a different kind of tired, where you clearly pushed yourself, but in joy and glee. And there's something about, you're finding a balance between the red line and the marathon. But you're very experienced in fatigue and training really beyond the limits that normal, regular, high-performance athlete train. What do you think is the key to finding how much should I redline? I know you don't like hit drills, right? How much should I redline? How much should I marathon? Do I just want to practice recovery? Like, is it all about recovery? Like, this is something you're currently exploring, and part of Muay Thai Bones is I like talking about things that we're just thinking about.
I think that there's
it's a new challenge for you. This red line awareness is like only a couple weeks old now.
Yeah, I think that it's the mental state you enter into when you're fatigued, which is, there's the kind of fatigue that you're like, I can't. Like, your coach says do 50, and I don't have the balls to tell Pinu I can't. I don't say these things to him, but I feel I can't, and then you just do it. But the mentality of like, I'm so tired, I'm gonna have to pull this way down just to make it into it. You can pull it down, but keep it at the line kind
What's
of thing.
the line?
Because, well,
It's not the red line.
if I'm like, I can't do the 50 kicks and I actually opt out of it, or I'm like, reduce it and I'll do 30 or something, I don't feel good about that. And so you're tired and you don't feel like you're badass. If you end up trying to do the 50 and you end up doing 20, but you fucking put it in there, you're like, I'm gonna hit it, like I'm gonna like kill it, and you fail or whatever, okay, your mentality was I'm gonna go after it, rather than like, I'm gonna pull it back. Because actually, you can pull it back.
Right.
Like, that's fine. It's not this like kill yourself every day. You can pull it back, but your mentality in pulling it back has to be, I'm hitting this part of it. It can't be a like, I'm gonna like baby myself today. Nobody feels good babying themselves.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, you're tired and you feel like an asshole. It's a bad combination.
Double loss. And so when you're, how often, for someone who has longer training sessions, should they be redlining, like, to failure?
Jesus, I don't know.
I don't know. Think to yourself, like, how much do you want to do?
I feel like there should be a moment of red line in every session, like
every 3
in
hours,
something,
or every pad work.
No, I don't know that you can like dole it out like that, but it just has to be like you have to be becoming familiar with that limitation,
that failure.
Like, you have to know where it is and you have to see it move. And I don't know how often that is for people.
I'm not asking for people. You.
I don't know, because I've been marathoning. I've been pulling myself away.
So you're going to try to weave in more push to failure.
Yeah.
In what you're doing.
Yeah. So even if, like, when I'm doing my knees in the corner, even if 10 of them are redlining.
Yeah.
You
totally.
just see it.
And then you can feel what it took to recover. You said you're going to do this thing in running where you're going to run rounds. What was this?
Why are you outing me?
Why is that an out?
Because I just told you I'm going to try it.
Yeah, but why is it a secret?
Because I haven't tried it yet. It was just an idea.
Okay. Talking about some theoretical other fighter who runs, what would be an interesting thing for them to try? Why you don't want to talk about this?
I don't want to talk about it, but it
was just an idea.
Yeah,
it's not. Who cares?
I do. If now talking about it, I might not do it. So I was talking about how in my morning runs, because the way fights are structured is narrative, and you really have to, the kind of fighter I am, you have to build 3, 4, 5. In order to build my confidence in my ability to recover, to like strain myself at 3 and be able to build on that at 4. I was gonna build into my runs basically like a
time sprint
intervals, so that it's still the 10K run, and that takes me about 45 minutes. So that's about 3 fights. I can do this 3 times of like timing it so that when I'm entering round 3, I sprint and then have to sprint again, and then you can kind of like have a maintaining dominance round 5 and then start again at round 1.
Are you thinking about also jogging in between?
I don't jog. My regular pace.
Are there going to be regular paces? Would there be regular paces between the fights? The fight rounds?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I might only do 1 fight the first time.
Yeah,
like,
just to see how
figure
it feels.
out what it is.
Yeah. That sounds cool. Because it's part of that timing and tempo, putting the body through cycles that will be familiar when fighting, which I think is a big theme of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we covered that pretty good.
Okay.
Orca.
We're live.
Okay. Continuing to another subject, we're switching it up big time. That was actually, normally we hop around every 20 minutes, but that was kind of a continuous training tempo.
It's a little bit more of our real conversations.
Why? What do you mean?
Because
that
you
we
actually,
just go on and on
you're
about
like,
something?
let's follow that thread rather than like, now what do you want to talk about?
Totally, that's true. Well, the Muay Thai Bones came about because we just have these insane conversations all the time, and we're like, we might as well just share it with people. And it's been really a huge. I really like the format, and people have loved it. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, thanks for being a patron.
Yeah.
Right? We're gonna keep pushing for more and more inventive stuff. What do we have? Library Coffee is a cool version of this.
Yeah, so Library Coffee is like the mini version. It's like the express version of our podcast, and we do it after I've done a Muay Thai library session or after I've voiced it. But it's just kind of a like short version of let's rap about that for a real
fresh
quick
take
second.
about training with a legend or a great crew. It's much more Muay Thai specific. Okay, this one I don't even know where this conversation is going to go, and I feel like you are not even super comfortable talking about this.
Go straight.
But I find it really important, and
Kevin's favorite is finding subjects that I'm really uncomfortable talking about. He's like,
because you
put
say
that in the thing.
You say the most interesting things though when you have discomfort about something.
You know what? I'm always talking about be uncomfortable in training. So I guess
Totally.
it's like taking my own goddamn advice.
Life is suffering. Okay, so we're going to talk about Sakyant. What are you doing?
You left the cooler open.
Oh. Sakyant, which are, so if you don't know what Sakyant are, they are traditional Thai tattoos done by an Arjan or a monk, which have, they're done not with a gun machine, but they're done by hand with a bamboo or metal rod, single needle.
They call them poke tattoos in some cultures.
Oh, do they? And they have religious beliefs attached to them, magical beliefs attached to them. They're meant to empower, protect, charm the bearer.
It's very much like an amulet that
Yes.
you wear on your skin.
It's an amulet you never take off. Yeah. And an amulet, amulets are, I don't know, do you have yours out?
Yeah.
Amulets are religious iconography that also are imbued with powers and beliefs. The reason why we're going to talk, Sylvie's got tons of prominent Sakyant. Her Arjan is Arjan P. Bang Kating, and we've been going to him for 7 years or so, maybe more.
I think 6. I don't think I got a Sakyant our first year.
So 6 years.
Yeah.
When he was kind of a pretty relatively unknown local Sakyant master. He's pretty young. When we first went to him, and he kind of has blossomed into a kind of very well-known and much followed, it seems like.
Yeah.
Many more Westerners are going to get Sakyants from him. When we started, there were not a lot. This is to say it's a relationship we've had with him for a long time.
Yeah.
So, whoa, where are you going? Oh, we're going down my favorite road.
And the difference between an Ajahn and a monk is that a monk is ordained into the Sangha, which is the Buddhist religious
Church, kind of.
sector. Monks cannot touch women, so a lot of monks won't tattoo women. Some do. They'll just do it without touching you, but it's rare. An Ajahn is not ordained, although they follow a lot of the same precepts and same belief systems and things. And all Sakyant come from this lineage of what's called a Rusi. A Rusi is like a hermit, and it's like the grand teacher.
Yeah, like a religious hermit.
But Ajahn actually means like professor, so it's like a high-ranking teacher. So the thing about having a Sakyant master who's doing my Sakyant for me in this whole process of when I get them is I consider Ajahn P my teacher. Like
he's literally teaching you through Sakyant.
Yes.
Not only the experience, which is very informative, but then also all of the symbols and beliefs and practices that surround what you're imbued with.
Yeah.
All right. where I want to enter this is what the reason why we're talking about it now is after I have several Sakyant from Arjanpi, I got this centipede first, and then I got a very large elephant head on my right arm, and this was several years ago, right?
Yep.
And I waited several years before I was going to get another Sakyant from him, because I feel like each Sakyant has a meaning or a lesson, like Sylvie's talking about, and you really want to digest what that is that you've put on you. And for me, it was a long time. Like, I wanted to digest what was already on me. And symbolically, just to let you know about my own thinking about the symbolism, this royal elephant on my right arm is like this big power, majestic power that carries royalty. And then on my left arm is the centipede, which is like multi-hand, kind of like moves through cracks and crevices, kind of the opposite energy. It's almost like yang and yin to me, and that they were balanced between each other, or they express two different parts of my persona or soul. So finally I got to the point where I started to be able to see where the next Sakyant would be and what it would be. And I, for many years, would just visit Arjanpi's Facebook page and look at all the photos he puts up of people getting Sakyant and see, does anyone speak to me? And for the longest time, from the beginning, when Sylvie got her two tigers put on her back with her Takroh, Arjanpi's Sakyant, his tigers are just like unreal. Like, they're different than every other Sakyant that he does. There's something about his tigers that are alive.
It's like they move.
They move on the skin.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's connected to them. Maybe in the curves of the stripes. The way he treats the stripes is just really something. So I'm like, I wanted his tiger on me. And so I got this. I don't know if you're on YouTube, you could see the Sakyant of the tiger. We got this. What's that? After your Jamkwan fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to talk about what does it mean for a Westerner to come to Thailand and take on the religious symbols that do not belong to their own culture, their own native culture. And you have the picture of the, like, just like how Tool sings about the, like, fans with the new tattoos.
The OG Tool new tattoo?
Yeah, totally. There is this kind of, like, symbol of the, like, the bro who comes and, like, fights 3 fights and has covered with Sakyant. Do you know what I'm talking about, by the way? I
Yes.
feel like I'm leaving.
Yes. No,
I feel like
totally
I'm leaving you out.
No,
We're
I
on
totally
radio.
do. I totally do.
So you have to say things. So there's that figure, right? And then you have the, like, figure, the larger concept or criticism of cultural appropriation, where you're, like, taking the styles or designs that have deep meaning in a certain culture, extracting them from the culture to some degree, and using them as direct decoration or coolness factor.
Yeah, or kind of allowing the stigma of them to remain with one group, whereas you're elevating it or something.
Yeah, and I think these are worthy. That's a worthy also question, like, to talk about. Any time that you're from one culture, a position of affluence, interacting with another culture, what is the ultimate value of what you're doing to yourself and then to others, right? Mm-hmm. Do you want to help me with this at all?
I think that there's a complication with Sakyant because they are specifically sacred traditional tattoos. That there's a gap between how tattoos are perceived now, modern in Western culture,
Which is hip, cool.
and more people have them and they're decorative.
Right.
Whereas like, you'll see a lot of hipsters have like sailor tattoos because it's like Americana and it's like old school, old style, whatever the thing is. That's not what that meant 50 years ago, kind of thing.
Right.
That used to be a tribe.
Actually, that's kind of how tattoos used to be, is pretty similar to how Sakyant are. They're lower class.
Yeah, they're very common,
and
but
they
they're
have
covered.
magical components.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to take the Western perception and attitudes about decorative tattoos, of like, this is expressing me and my individuality, and custom tattoos and this kind of thing, and then to try to translate that onto Sakyant, which are very much not custom. Like, you get the stamp of the Sakyant that does something for you, and then because of the Ajahn or monk who's doing it for you, it will be custom because it's each person is individual. But
Well, you're breezing over something. So when you go, like when I got this tiger, this is a tiger, and probably many of the associative incantational writing around it he's done 100 times.
yeah,
Right? So it's not, originality isn't really part of the process.
yeah,
And I might meet somebody who has the exact same one.
yeah,
Because the Sakyant is seen as a device
yeah.
that does something. Almost like a machine.
Yeah, I get annoyed when people ask me, what does it mean? And I'm like, it doesn't mean something, it does something.
Like, what does a toaster mean? It means your bread is ready. Like,
It's not like that. It's not like that.
But, so this is what I'm saying, is that you don't expect originality in a device.
Right.
The device you want to be the same every time.
Yeah, I want my pacemaker to do what pacemakers do.
Right. And so when you get like a tiger tattoo, it does certain things. There's often a protective element. There's a kind of like there's an aspect of a tiger that's very ferocious in Thai conception, that maybe in the West we don't really think of tigers that way. We think of them more as sleek and beastie,
Yeah, it might be like a wolf
but not
or
like terrifying. Yeah. So there's something terrifying about a tiger, but it does what it does. And then Arjun P, there is some element of originality every time he puts it on, though.
Yeah, I think that the kata that he puts in there are unique every
Well,
time.
if they are, or if they're not, there is this feeling when you watch him put it, he places it on the body
Yeah.
in a very, I don't know, there's something about it that makes the whole thing come alive, that makes it feel like it's an original interface
Yeah.
between himself and the student,
Yeah.
right? So that's where the originality comes from,
Yeah.
is the personal connection. Did I run us down a cul-de-sac?
No, this is no.
No, I don't mean the car. I mean the...
No, but you're talking about the intersection of Westerners coming and getting basically foreign gods or like foreign powers put on them.
Yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, isn't there an element of that which is like potentially bullshitty?
Yeah, I actually originally was like, I will not get Sakyant because I had a narrow scope of them as being like Muay Thai tattoos.
Well, correct that misunderstanding.
They're not Muay Thai tattoos.
Like at all.
Muay Thai fighters will get the tattoos because they're in a dangerous line of work, and so having the protection makes sense. So this is the tattoo of a warrior or a policeman or a gambler or people who are in danger. They're gonna want some kind of protection, and so that's the tattoo that
and
they'll
they're
get.
of a social class of people who sometimes become Muay Thai fighters, but then also become other things.
Yeah.
Right?
So they're not unique to Muay Thai fighters. Not every Muay Thai fighter has them.
Matter of fact,
Lumpini and
most stadium
Rajadamnern are
fighters do not
pretty conservative, so they actually make you
don't
cut your hair, and like you don't see a lot of tattoos.
You seem to be breezing over the idea like there almost are no
There are very
Sakyant.
few.
They're very, very few. I think they must frown upon it on some level.
Yeah.
It's not like every Muay Thai fighter who gets a Sakyant isn't good enough to fight there.
Yeah.
Right?
But so I originally didn't ever want to get one because it felt like a kind of poser, like you go on your trip and get the like Muay Thai package of like you train, maybe fight and get the tattoo kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that just felt really inauthentic to me. And it also, I had a misunderstanding that I actually probably only really understood a few Sakyant in, probably by the time I got my Rahu, is that I had it backwards, which was that people who will shake their finger at those guys who do come and get the like package deal and you get the Sakyant on your third day and all these things, is that there's this assumption from the West that like you have to earn this tattoo first before getting it. Like you're not a real fighter, so you can't have a Muay Thai tattoo.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Right.
And it's not a Muay Thai tattoo. But I don't think, one, that I actually earned any of my tattoos before getting them. And the idea that I will ever have to stop earning them is also bullshit. Like, as long as this is in my skin, I'm earning it the whole time. It's like, you're never gonna be like, well, I've paid my parents back for all the things they've ever done for me. Yeah. Like, it doesn't work that way. And so this, I've totally loosened up my snooty feelings about people who come and get Sakyant and don't really know what they mean and don't really know what they are. I think that it's disrespectful to treat them as decoration, like as a cool tattoo with absolutely no effort towards understanding it, but continually trying to understand more of it, I think is cool. I think that's part of the authentic process of it.
Can we roll back into it? Didn't this idea of earning your tattoo start with your tigers that are on your back?
I thought it
Wasn't
started
that the
before
point?
that, but maybe it was my tigers.
What is before that?
I thought it was my Rahu.
Your Rahu?
Because Ajahn P did not want to do it. He was like, that's an insane tattoo for a woman to be getting.
To let everybody know, Rahu is a kind of god of chaos. He's a very powerful, dark figure. And the Sangwan is this necklace, and it's a traditional kind of like Ayutthaya, old Buran warrior.
The one that I have is specifically a Kunpan one, which is like such ultimate masculinity.
Yeah, and for a woman to be wearing this, we still can never forget when you texted him what you wanted.
No, that was my tigers.
Oh, was that your tigers?
Yeah. When I told him that I wanted the Rahu and the Sangwan, he was like...
Oh, that's right.
He was like, oh, Sylvia.
Yeah, like, why are you asking
people
for that?
are gonna look at you like, what the hell is this? And he was not wrong. Like, people for the first year looked at me like, holy shit.
Yeah.
They probably still do. I don't see it as much
Yeah, we just don't
anymore.
see. We don't even notice it. But anyways, the idea was you were taking on this like dark god figure and a big necklace, which at the time was like very transgressive.
Yeah.
And the feeling was you had to somehow come to grips with what this god, this deity meant to you. And like you said, live up to or earn the tattoo.
Yeah.
And then when you got the tigers, there was this definite feeling like, I want tiger energy, which we've kind of been talking about this, like play with your food, although tiger is more ferocious, maybe a little more beast mode. You're like, getting tigers, now I have to channel that energy. Wasn't there a feeling of that? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to remember this feeling of like living up to or earning the tattoo, rather than I earned it, now I get it.
Yeah, again, there are cultural codes between Sakyant in Thailand for among Thais and then the kind of tourist or jumping in from other cultures and getting them. There are, I don't know if you would call them tendencies or like methods of who gets what tattoo. So the tigers are, because they bestow authority and Amnat and power and all of these things, they're kind of for like military officers or like police officers. They're like higher rank kind of things. And it's like, who the fuck are you to get twin tigers Like, kind of like, how dare you kind of thing. I don't know.
And the tigers are backwards facing, so they're kind of watch your back, which happens when you're in a position of authority.
Right.
That when you're in authority, then people can come at you from behind your back, right?
And so in the actual Thailand customs of who gets what tattoos, my tattoos are not common for who I am in terms of like on the surface, a young-ish woman, like all these things are not who get these tattoos. But when I would ask for them from Ajahn P, I would point out, I'm a fighter. I'm in this position of influence and danger and trying to like create these big things, and they all have fit me in the long run in terms of like who I am and what I'm trying to be, and like the actual transformations and protections I do need in what I do. But again, that's the process of like, you're always going to be earning it.
Well, I feel like you're saying beautiful things, but I want to like pull them open a little bit. What does it mean as a meditation, maybe, to want to earn the tattoo or to use the tattoo to expand yourself?
Well, it's this whole idea that you earn it or that you get it and it automatically imbues something that very instant. It'd be like if you're a fucking awful person and you put a crucifix on and now you're a good person. Like, it's a symbol that allows you to meditate on what kind of man you want to be or what kind of person you want to be or what values you believe in. And so people who are very religious under hardship or adversity will clutch their amulet or like ask for help from a higher power or whatever the thing is, and these being like an amulet or like a symbol that's in your skin, it is this constant reminder of like, what are you trying to be? Like, what are the values that you cemented in yourself to be?
So can I ask you, don't want to get too deep, too personal, but like, what are the values that you meditated on with Rahu on your chest and the tigers on your back? Like, what are the things within you that you're reaching for in that kind of like directed way? Because a lot of this feels like a kind of expansion. Like we have like a concept or a story about who we are and what we're capable of, which is a very small spectrum of all the things we're capable of feeling and doing and thinking. And it feels like Sakyant are about the kind of like expansion of that narrow beam, that little spectrum, and pulling on. Am I not going in the right direction on that? By the way, this is just gorgeous surroundings around here. I don't know if you can see it in the video.
I think that one of the things about Rahu that's largely misunderstood, like a lot of people are afraid of him. He's semi-demonic. It's like not the most welcome thing to have on your chest as you're walking around. He's not bad. He's kind of the flip side of Ganesha. Ganesha is the placer and remover of obstacles, and kind of like this, being the placer and remover of obstacles is kind of this like you guide someone's path through difficulty or through
He's kind
adversity.
Thought of as the more beneficent version, or
Ganesha. Yeah. So Rahu is the like flip side of that, where he's kind of chaos. And so when there's an eclipse, there's this like, that's Rahu eating the sun, and people will like set off fireworks to try to scare him away and all those kinds of things. But the thing that I connect with Rahu is that in our entire path in Muay Thai, there's been some fucking chaos, like really hard, really like, I don't know, I can't see my hand 3 feet in front of my face and I'm supposed to keep moving. Like, what the fuck? Is that having faith that opportunity comes out of chaos. It's like all the chips fly into the air. They will land. And how they land, if you can see the opportunity, you can say yes to it and you can take it. That's a value that I want on my fucking chest. Like, facing out is that when it gets dark, when it's scary, when things are going wrong, there is opportunity happening, and you just have to keep moving.
See it.
And I see that as an overwhelmingly optimistic thing, whereas people
optimistic.
see Rahu as like a very negative thing. And I just think it's a misinterpretation of him. And I've also, he has this, because he like eats the sun and the moon, this like consuming the cosmos is a very like knowledge.
That's how I
like
see it.
old
That's how I see him, yeah.
conceptions of knowledge.
Like being voracious to know.
Yeah.
Which is like your whole fucking Muay Thai library. Like how you study with everybody.
Yeah. And he's also a protector of Buddhism, so if he were actually a demon, he would not have anything to do with it. It's a little bit like the Naga.
Yeah, he's been folded in. He's an old god in a way. And it feels like the tigers a little bit have take a back seat for you sometimes. You don't think a lot about the tiger energy, even though you've felt their energy at moments in your life. I'm wondering, I'm asking you.
It's something that I have difficulty connecting to, but not because I'm not connected to it. It's a difficulty of awareness, in that like, it might be difficult for you to connect to your assertive side, because a lot of times you just don't want to cause problems. And so you have like a tendency towards avoidance, but that doesn't mean that you don't also have this assertive part. And so you're disconnected from it a lot, but that doesn't mean that you're not connected to it. But it's an awareness.
I was surprised. I'm like, I asked you recently, I'm like, do you sometimes forget you have your tattoo, them on your back?
Never.
And I sometimes forget I have an Orca, a Haida American Indian killer whale on my back that I got maybe 20 years ago. And I forget because I don't see it. And you're like, I never forget. Do you feel like you have to live up to your tigers in the way that you want to live up to your Rahu? Do you feel that same kind of, I need to earn them by connecting? You're like, I'm not connected to that energy sometimes. You feel like you owe it to yourself?
Yeah, but I don't know, I think it's maybe too big of a concept to get into, but Kevin and I went to see tigers. We were looking at tigers. And there's this one that was like prowling around. It was in such a bad mood. It was just fucking like, it was just pacing.
Yeah.
It was hot. And this trainer had like this stick that he was kind of like trying to get the tiger to like bite, or like kind of messing with it.
This
basically
is a place where people go and like you can interact with tigers.
Like the tiger didn't want anything to do with the people who were watching it, and I think that the trainer was trying to get it to like have a little bit of excitement or something. But it became this joke because the trainer was like Kevin and I was like the tiger, and I started doing voices for the trainer with his little stick, being like, you better get in a better mood. Get in a bad mood. Because Kevin's like this. He likes to tell me when I'm in a bad mood, as if fucking telling me I'm in a bad mood is going to put me in a good mood. I was that tiger. And it was just this feeling of the like, I know that energy. This like, don't fuck with me.
Remember his shoulders? His shoulder blades were like, kind of like driving up and down like pistons, his shoulder blades.
And so I think that there's this like, in the way that you talked about the orca being like a totem animal, I would never have picked a tiger as my totem animal. But there are moments when you come in contact with an actual animal that you're like, I fucking get it. Like, I get what it's like, poor energy is. I get what Blake was writing about with the tigers. Like, you meet an elephant for the first time and you just go, no words needed.
Yeah.
It's very much the Buddhist thing of like someone who's never tasted sweet, you can try to describe it, but the second you put sugar on their tongue, you don't need to teach her anymore.
Yeah.
There are energies in animals, in all animals, and some of them are incredibly intense, that you're like, that's the sugar on the tongue.
Yeah.
And so I think
you have that with a tiger?
I have that with a tiger, and I feel like trying to become better at connecting with that is my earning of the tiger tattoo.
It's very cool. For me, there's another dimension to this, which is when you come to a foreign god or deity or power, one that's not woven into the sign system, the semiotics of your own culture, you get the exoticness of it, the otherness of it allows you a doorway of meditative transformation that's not always what?
I'm worried about the battery.
Well, how far
Sorry,
down
no,
is
keep
it?
going. Maybe like 5 minutes.
That is not readily available to you in your own culture. Like, and you get this a lot of times in kind of religious conversion.
Yeah.
Like kind of how like St. Paul, who was a very like devout Jew, conservative Jew, converted to Christianity, and just like his mind exploded with what was possible to take on at the time it was a kind of alien belief system, and he ended up exploring Christianity through the Greek world, not his Jewish world. There is this thing that happens when you connect with a foreign god, to use shorthand, which allows a kind of degree of focus that can change you. And I think, like for instance, you see this actually in Japanese anime when they like the way they treat Catholicism. Like the way that Catholicism, like in what was the
Blue Exorcist.
The symbols of Catholicism were exotic and eroticized almost.
Yeah.
The cross and the way that, because that was outside of the Japanese culture, it becomes a launching point of transformation in like the anime Blue Exorcist.
Yeah.
I think the same thing happens as a Westerner when coming to Thailand and encountering this particular form of Buddhism, that these symbols can be transformative to you in a way that's like it's respectful because of the degree of intensity, but it also walks that line of orientalization,
Yeah.
creating something making too exotic.
It's that same thing with language where like when you're native to the language and you just grow up speaking it, you just learn it as it goes. You never think about it.
Yes.
Who was it? Alan Watts was like going through word origins, and he's like, naughty. We think of naughty as being misbehavior, but it actually is the same stem as not, which means nothing. I'm like, fuck. Like, that's incredible, and I never would have made that connection myself because I'm not thinking about the language. You just hear it and you say it.
You're just using it.
You just grow up with it.
Right.
Whereas if you're coming to the language from outside, you see those things all the time. Like you see those patterns and you see the way that words break apart, things like that. It's very cool.
Should we start this over?
Yeah.
You're worried about this?
Yeah.
Because I want to go on to an analogy based on what you just said, which is really cool.
Okay. That no.
Rolling. My favorite. I came up with a connection with what you were just saying. Where you're talking about, oh, there's this word, naughty. I don't even think about what it would be. But if you study the origins of words, you maybe make the connection. Or if you're not a native English speaker and you love the English language, you start to see internal connections within the practice that would never be thought about by the normal user. And in this way, when somebody goes to Ajahn P to get a protective tattoo, in some ways you just are using it the way you'd use a word. Like, you might not necessarily be drawn into a heavy meditation about what tigers are,
right,
or what Rahu is to your life.
Yeah,
right?
It's not a necessary component of.
Yeah, although the meaning of the practice is to take on those larger relationships. So, just like not to pick on a particular religion, but if you're raised a Catholic in Italy, in a small town, and you go into confession, going into confession would have a kind of like regular practice.
Yeah.
But if you're converted to Catholicism and not raised in Italy, but you come from a completely different culture, you might have a relationship to Catholicism, to the confession, that's more true to what the purpose of confession is. I mean, there's multiple purposes of confession, but one of the purposes. And I think that that's one of the interesting things is coming as a foreigner to these practices, is that you have the opportunity to kind of like focus on the meanings more than maybe somebody in a culture would. And I think this is something that happens also with Muay Thai. You get Samart or others being like, Muay Thai will belong to the West eventually.
Yeah.
Because he sees people come to him and be like, how did you throw that reverse elbow?
Yeah.
What angle of your foot, what is the angle of your foot when you teep? And he's like, Westerners care about little tiny things about what I did in my career, whereas Thais are like, oh, you're an old man, or that was happening 2 decades ago.
Yeah, or I just want to fight to get the kadua.
The kadua, yeah, right. And so the exotic quality of otherness, it goes in 2 ways. It can be like, I'm not going to respect it, I'm just going to kind of like idolize it and keep it in a cool way. Or it can actually invite real connections, like somebody actually finding out from Samart, well, how do you turn your foot on your teep? And then Samart feels more respected and more connected to a future of Muay Thai. And I think that's what's kind of like it's contained in the potential of taking Sakyant in Thailand.
Totally.
Is most of the definitions or arguments about cultural appropriation that I've read all have this additional component, which is after you appropriate or take, the question is, do you then work to create connections with the community from which you're taking? Yeah. Or do you just take it and run? Yeah. Right? And I think like...
So stop, you have to stay to the right.
I feel like I'm talking and you're just nodding.
I was thinking about...
I'm losing you a little bit.
I was thinking about your conversion thing, how like, I grew up saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school until you didn't have to anymore, and it's like, yeah, okay, I know what it means or whatever.
Yeah.
But what that would mean to someone who was getting their nationalization or something, like, it will never mean that to me, ever.
Yeah, but I mean, and the comfort with which what you feel about the Pledge of Allegiance would never mean that to you either, to them. Like there is something about, like when you're native to a language, you don't see things special about it. Yeah. But you do have it's sewn into you. Yeah. It's so much a part of you that you can't be separated from it. And that's beautiful too, right?
It's also like in having misunderstood Sakyant as being Muay Thai tattoos. And tons of people still misunderstand Sakyant as being Muay Thai tattoos. when they get them with this is connecting me to Muay Thai. This is connecting me to my fighter identity, which is actually in and of itself beautiful. Like it's a meditation in and of itself of like this symbolizes something important to me, even if it's technically culturally wrong to the culture it's coming from.
And I see a broader connection, which is, I don't know if you want to get into the whole philosophy of it, but this kind of transhuman kind of thing that we're all cybernetic. We like take foreign things and incorporate them in our lives, and they become extensions of us. Our cell phone becomes a human cell phone interface that is a single entity of itself. When you take foreign things, like a religion you were not raised in, or a martial art that is not part of your culture, or you take on Sakyant that you were not raised with, you create an interface between yourself and other practices in the world that expands you. And in that regard, there's a value to the foreignness of it that's not just a value to you.
Yeah.
You're creating a bridge between two worlds.
Yeah.
And it's actually a really beautiful thing. The thing is for me personally, I return to what you're talking about, for me it's not earning it, but it's like wanting this pictographic thing to be life-changing for me.
Yeah.
In some way. And there's another element, if you don't mind me like bending down into it, is the actual process of the Sakyant is also transformative.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about it? Because everybody's like, doesn't that hurt? Right? How much does that hurt?
Like, that's the point.
Well, what is this about? That the pain is really the point. Like,
but the pain isn't actually the point, but it is an incredibly good teacher within the point.
Didn't he say to you that pain is a teacher or something? Was that not him? Or is that something you drew?
I said that after getting my back done, but...
Your back was like 5 hours or something, 4 hours?
It was like 4.5, but it was really, really hard.
And it was it's non-stop pretty much, right?
Yeah. I don't know what to...
Okay. I'm talking about what is the process of a Sakyant that is a teaching process? The actual application.
For me, and I don't know if it's...
For you.
I don't know that it's meant to be like this to anybody or should be like this to anybody, but Sakyant are not 100% Buddhist. Like, they come from a mix of traditions.
There's animism that predates Buddhism in Thailand.
Yeah,
right?
There's like Cambodian influence and all these different things. But one of the things about the pain of the process that is incredibly Buddhist is this word in Thai. It means oton, it is oton, and it means both patience and like to endure. So you have to endure this process. You don't stop when it hurts. It's what we were talking about earlier about like the suffering doesn't stop, it just moves. Like you can't ever actually escape it.
Yeah.
And the fucking endurance process of my back especially, although all of them hurt a lot, was just because Ajahn doesn't stop.
Yeah.
He actually goes a little bit harder when you start to fall apart.
This is what I find very interesting, is that when he can feel you resisting and breaking, it feels like he starts to dig the needle in. Like, more forcefully, more rapidly, almost.
Yep.
Like he's...
Because you're fighting it.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't fight it.
Yeah.
And so I had to accept, Tamjai is accept. You have to accept that this doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And there's a separation of it that's like pain is happening. It's not your pain. It doesn't mean anything. There's no like, I shouldn't be suffering this. Like, can you give me a second to catch my breath? Like, it completely becomes this like, there's a gap between you, which is totally an illusion, and the pain, which is totally real. And the connection of those two is not something you can control. And when you finally let go of that, it is a profound glimpse of a shore that you will always be trying to get back to if you're trying to evolve your mind towards that kind of understanding of like.
And it's it's amazing to me that one undergoes the potential for that experience, which is pain is happening, it might not ever stop, and you have to like submit to it, and that is that there is a imprinting of an animal or a symbol, like a divine symbol, as part of that result, and then it is left stamped on you as a reminder for the rest of your life. Like the fact that you get a pictographic form, a roop, right?
Yeah.
That is sitting there to remind you and then to like shape that experience is very meaningful.
Yeah, well, it's when people are like, what does the Sakyant mean? And you're like, that's for you to answer. Like, it doesn't mean anything except what you make it mean, but it does these things more universally. Is that you could totally sit through a tattoo that hurts so bad, and you've gone through the pain, and then you hate your tattoo, and it's on you forever. Talking more about like Western tattoos.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with like my scars. You go through the pain, and then you're embarrassed about the scars on your face, and you have this like double suffering. Or you could be like, you suffer once, and then you have paid. You paid with your suffering to have this power and protection and magic. And you can totally see battle scars like that. That's like,
that's how
I paid for these.
Yes.
People are like, oh my God, why would you? It's so awful and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I fucking paid for this. Like, I paid for it.
I love it, baby.
I'm not paying for it.
Yeah. It's so beautiful.
But it's the meaning you put into it.
It's so beautiful. It's very beautiful. Okay, I think that's good. Let's go to the next subject. That's really amazing, though.
Are we
very
starting?
moving. Yeah, let's start and stop. We have to find this. Keep rolling.
On 3 or after 3?
Okay, this is going to be more your story because I don't really.
I love talking. My favorite.
How do we want to enter into this? We wanted to talk about this thing you're doing where you made a focused decision to travel with the gym when their fighters are fighting at Lumpini and Rajadamnern Stadium.
Yeah.
Right? And that the goal was, there was a couple goals, but one of the first parts of the goal was, if you have a goal to fight at Lumpini Stadium at some point, like to be the first or to help bring change, that you are able to fight there with a Thai fighter probably.
So back up, women can't fight at Lumpini or Rajadamnern.
Or even touch the ring.
So
yeah.
I want to fight there. And so part of my process is making that possible.
Right. And so you're like, I should be going to Lumpini Stadium. Right?
Well, yeah,
Isn't this the impetus of it? I don't remember how it began. Maybe take off on that.
I went once or twice, and
going is getting in the van at 5 in the morning. 3 in the morning.
4 in the morning. It's so exhausting. Because there's early weigh-in, so you have to drive to Bangkok, weigh in, get the boys fed and rehydrated, then you can rest in a room for most of the day, but then you like get up and go early to the stadium. It's like a 22-hour turnaround. It's really intense. I fucking love it. I love it. And Kevin's always like, no, it's going to make you so tired. I'm like, I don't care. I want to go. Part of it was that I like going and being part of that process because I love my gym and I like watching
and
what
you
happens.
Train with these boys. Like some of these are actually your training partners.
Yeah.
They're part of the gym family.
Yeah, and I want to see how this is done. Like, I want to see what the process is. But then, after a couple of times of going and then not going, Pinu had said that there was some guy at the stadium who kept asking where I was when I wasn't there, which I was like, wow, I didn't know that people even noticed whether I was there or not, which was kind of amazing. But then, pretty important people like promoters and like high officials started making this joke about when are you going to fight at Lumpini, and jokes are only funny for a while and then they start being a little bit serious the more you tell them. And so I told Kevin, I'm like, I want them to see my face at Lumpini a lot so that they keep thinking about it. They keep being like, when is Sylvie gonna fight here? Like, oh, we see her all the time, she belongs here. Like, that's where you are. Like,
and which is a thing that actually happens in real life, is that young fighters go with their gym, help their gym before they're ready to be stadium fighters.
Yep.
And they see them, and then 3 years later they're fighting there.
Yeah, it's very clear to me that Pinu is making a concerted effort to put not his younger son, who's 5 years old. He wants him coming to these fights all the time, even though I don't think he'll ever fight. But he wants him growing up in the stadia. Like, that's how you grow up as a Muay Thai fighter.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things about me wanting to go. But there's this very difficult thing about going, which is that the joke will no longer be a joke is an eventually kind of thing. And as it stands right now, I can't really do anything. Like,
well, what does that
there
mean?
are boys who go in the morning as what in Thai is called piliang, and it means like a cornerman. So the fighters will go help the other fighters. So you help them towel off when they're cutting weight. You do all these things that are like little menial tasks that like a trainer or coach or crew or head of the gym won't necessarily do because it's like grunt work. That's what I would be doing if I were just another fighter at the gym. But because I'm a woman, I can't do any of it. Like, I'm excluded from helping with the massage or that's another one that's a joke that they make all the time that I don't want to like move towards serious. They're like, oh, Sylvie, you want to help? I'm like, no, I can't. But you can't go into the back room, like all of these different things. So I end up like taking photos and like creating a like media expression of what's happening. And the inclusion exclusion of that experience is beautiful and painful at the same time.
Yeah.
And the reason this got brought up, and the reason we're talking about it here, is that I'm gonna cry. Krunu's older brother died very fast, and there's a very long funeral process that can last from like 3 to 7 days, or if you're the king, for like a month or more. But for Pinok, it was 7 days, and at the end of these 7 days of going to the temple and listening to chanting every night, there's a cremation ceremony. And Kevin and I had been to one before, which was for
two.
Oh,
Siri
Andy.
Moncon,
I forgot about Andy.
Siri Moncon.
So when we went to Siri Moncon, who was Fighter of the Year in 1972,
yeah.
They, in front of the like cremation, what do you call it?
Crematorium.
Crematorium.
Where the body is in a casket.
They had
up
a
on a stand.
Ram Moy of Sagat and Pudpad Noy, who was just prior to the Golden Age top fighter.
Two of the greatest fighters
They
ever.
did a Ram Moy together, and then they did a mock fight with Samson Hassan as the referee.
We have film of it. I made a small documentary of it.
And so it was this like beautiful performance for a man whose life was Muay Thai to send him off. And for Pinok's, Krunu's older brother's cremation ceremony, Pinu asked me, Angie, PTT, and Alex to do a Ram Muay all together.
Okay.
And then there was a sparring
I'm
thing.
gonna stop you because nobody knows who those people are, other than people that follow you very closely. So who's PTT? Who's Angie? Who's Alex?
Okay. So, PTT was like a star of Petrungrung when I first got there. He had grown up at the gym. He became the Isuzu Omnoi champion, and then from there, he got signed to Thai Fight, and he basically has become a like star of Thai Fight. And he's like always moving forward in the poster to be like next to Sanchai, so he's doing really well. But so he was like the first star of Petrungrung when I came to know it.
And he's since separated from the gym, as sometimes happen when you get success, you break off from your smaller home gym and chase
Be a star somewhere.
bigger money.
Yeah. So that's PTT. Alex is an Italian kid. He's just turned 18 years old. 17?
I think 18.
He's been at the gym since he was like 12. He got there just before I did, but he was basically raised in the gym, a Western kid with Pinu's son. Pinu is legally his guardian, I guess not anymore because he's 18, but I don't know what the rules are in Italy and Thailand for that. But he's kind of a star of the gym now as this like Western fighter who's at Lumpini and has a big name and people recognize and are like, oh my God, his femur is so beautiful and all these different things. So Alex is like kind of a rising, established at the Stadia star Westerner in the gym. Angie is a trans fighter who within 2 years of starting training was the first trans to fight at Lumpini Stadium. So
A huge moment in gender and Muay Thai.
yeah, so she's a superstar as well. Completely unique story.
Was inspired by you early
Was
on.
inspired by me when she first started coming and training at the gym. She looked at my arms and was like, "Oh my God, this is happening." She's a good friend of mine. I love Angie. And then me, who's the crazy little Western woman who has fought the most in Thailand and has these crazy numbers and is starting to become more recognized among people who are not people I've met before. So we're kind of like 4 stars, sort of Petrungrung, and so we're putting on this ceremony performance. And Kevin asked me why I was so excited about doing that performance was because I'm being recognized as like a star of the gym. And it was no, I was so moved by being asked to do this performance because it's something I can do. I can't do anything for the gym like ever. I can do like social media or like, translate things.
You don't really fight with the gym or for the
I don't
gym.
fight with the gym or
They
for
don't
the gym.
really book your fights, and it's probably a good thing that you wouldn't have the freedoms that you have.
Yeah, they can't. Female Muay Thai and male Muay Thai is still largely separate in terms of like who your connections are and things like that. So for me, it was this, because I actually really cared a great deal for Pinok. His death was very painful for me. So to be able to perform at his cremation ceremony meant a lot personally, but the inclusion of being able to do something when I'm very often not allowed to do anything meant a lot.
At Lumpini, you're allowed to do things in the gym and such.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like officially do something.
Yeah.
And you performed the equivalent of what Sagat did at Suri Khan's.
Yeah.
One of the side dimensions of this, which is amazing to me, is like when you are at a family-style gym, like Petrungrung has accepted foreigners for a while, but at heart, it's about the Thai boys raising stadium fighters. Westerners are just kind of folded in like, yeah, you can come along, but we're really about this one thing, is that this is a family it's generations of men, all under a house. Like the gym is connected to the house. It's people walk through the house to go to the ring.
Yeah.
You're in someone's house, and Pinnock was Pinu's older brother, the brother he looked up to. Pinnock and Pinu were the brothers that created Petron Rung.
Their father founded it.
Their father founded it, but it was for their careers. And it was where the ring is and the bags are, there was a pineapple trees. And Pinnock was a really good Muay Thai fighter. He was a Channel 7 fighter, right?
Yep.
While Pinu got pulled into the Wong Sung Chai Lumpini circuit. And when we came there, just, I don't know, there's something about that you got to know him, Pinnock. Like, he wasn't part of Muay Thai anymore. He was really into competitive running. But he would come and hold pads sometimes. He had this devastating lock that he, that he taught you.
Yeah, Pinu's cauliflower ears from that lock.
From that lock.
Yeah.
And like, to me, it's very special that he transmitted like that lock and elements of Muay Thai pad holding for you before he like suddenly passed. He passed from cancer in a very rapid way. And I'm like, when we stay in Thailand and you get to make these relationships with people, part of it is people will pass and die. Like, we're staying here long enough that we're coming in touch with great sadness and tragedy.
Yeah.
Like, Andy passed. Surimon Khan, who we weren't super close to, but we're close to people who are close to him. Like, I don't know, there's something about being absorbed into the rhythms of a life, like real lives. And with real life comes death. I don't know. So for me on the outside, watching you do that, the Ramoy performance was beautiful because this is about that kind of like commitment to the values of a culture.
Yeah.
And for you to be folded into it, like, this is the interesting thing. You want to fight at Lumpini Stadium, which would involve Thais evolving in their way they perceive the gender.
Yeah.
Right? But you want that evolution to be an enrichment of what it is through incorporation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Better for everyone.
Better for everyone. Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts about inclusion, exclusion? I feel like what you experience at Lumpini is like a microcosm of generally how you feel about being a Thai fighter in Thailand. Like, you're more and more included, more and more recognized, appreciated, and then there's always also a feeling of being like sidelined just by the matter of gender or culture.
Yeah, it's dizzying, man. It's like there'll be this like, oh, there's no difference, like you're totally doing the same or are the same or whatever, and then just like hard fucking line that you didn't
like an invisible
see was gonna
wall,
happen. Like the door just slams and they're like, oh no, that door doesn't open yet, and you're just like, it's shocking. And it's it comes from Pinu, who I see as like he's changed a lot in the time that I've been at his gym. I feel like I've changed his mind about a lot of things. He has flexibility and ability to like, okay, this is not what I thought it was before, I can like evolve. Right. And then there are some things that it's just like, no, that's just the way that it is and it never changes. And it can be quite debilitating because you just don't know where those landmines are.
It's like the ground just slips out from under your feet suddenly.
Yeah. But I guess the thing about it is that like learning to move within the parameters that you have and build within the parameters that you have instead of just being confined by it is the gift of that lesson, like of coming against those lines all the time, is that you...
There's that really weird thing, Yot Kun Pon said to you, because to me it was unexpected. Yokumpan he's the elbow hunter. To me, he's the greatest elbow fighter ever, very likely by some standards. He was simultaneously held the Raja Damnaran and Lumpini belts, which is very rare for that to be the case. But he's socially low. Like, whatever life choices he's made, he is not super respected in a kind of like, he lives at the side of the gym. Like, a lot of Thai champions just get sidelined. And he's so sweet and he's incredible. And if you come to Pattaya, please take a private from him. You'll never forget it. But he was talking to you and he was like, everybody knows you, Sylvie. And he kind of is like, why do you even want to fight? You're already famous.
Yeah, I was getting upset because I was like, where does my road go? Like, when you have a fucking ceiling and you have to like, you keep growing but the ceiling stays, you develop this like hunch and you're like, where does this go? And I was feeling really like hopeless about not really having the like achievement of being able to fight at Lumpini or Raja Damnaran or whatever. And he looked at me and he was like, everyone knows you as though you've already fought at Lumpini and Raja Damnaran. Like, you didn't have to do the thing that makes you well known. And you're already well known.
He's almost like the reason why you fight there is to become well known.
Yeah. And it was so strange for me because I don't see what he saw as being so valuable as being valuable.
Yeah.
It was almost like a, like, I don't know, Parable or Alice in Wonderland type story where you like realize the value of this thing that you've been carrying around that you thought was like a rock or something. And I don't know that I've like fully accepted the value of that thing.
But it was beautiful that he saw it.
Yeah, and he's done that actually again, where his like praise or his like, this is so incredible is something that I totally don't ever recognize for myself. And those are the kinds of things that can surprise you coming from these landmines or like blind spots of cultural difference. It's so weird. I'm sure it's all cultures, but I just don't see it as much in the West because it's familiar or something. But the exoticism of like Thai men being able to hold two completely conflicting thoughts equally at the same time is astounding. Like, Diesel Noi brags about me so much about being the one Westerner who comes and fights bigger all the time. He's so weirdly proud of this and like talks about it all the time, and then in the same fucking breath will be like, you can't fight bigger people, it's not fair, it's not right, all of this stuff. And it's like he sees it as like this amazing thing and this terrible thing like at the same moment.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I come up against these difficulties because of that conflicting thought thing that's like, I am clearly nothing like any of the boys in my gym at all. Like, my path is nothing like theirs. And Krunu will get upset because he's like, you're not doing it the way we do it. And I'm like, how could I possibly? Like, I'm not allowed to do it the way that you do it. And he will simultaneously be like, yes, you're this completely unique thing, but this is the way it's done, and so that's the only way it can be done. You can't have both. It doesn't make sense. Like, it's
so all you can do is nurture the one. If they're going to hold two conflicting thoughts, you just have to feed the positive thought.
Yeah.
Like, if Diesel Noise, like, you're the only Westerner who just fights relentlessly upwards, most of them fight down for whatever reasons, like just opportunity. You're blessed in that you're small and courageous. You just keep feeding that picture for him. You know? And maybe the alternate picture withers or it becomes less important.
Well, that's the thing, is people are like with Angie fighting at Lumpini, forever, no Katoy, no Katoy, no Katoy, and then everyone's like, oh yeah, totally. Like,
Yeah, totally.
it's everyone just like on a dime.
Totally.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's go to the next one. Rolling?
Rolling.
Okay, we're not sure how long we're going to go on this topic, but it's something that came up in the last few days, and it's deep and profound, and hopefully we'll pull something interesting out of it. How do I want to enter this? Just to set the record about what happened, Sylvie had a great fight in Hua Hin against Jom Kwan, who we honestly consider one of the best 50-kilo fighters in the world. It's a shame people don't know about her, but she's an Asan fighter, so she's not exposed to Westerners that often. She's fucking awesome. Beat her for the second time in a row, which is not easy to do with a super skilled fighter because they can make adjustments. She was getting into a really good zone, eye contact, creative in her energy. And then she came up to Chiang Mai a couple days later, a few days, and fought Palmy, who she had recently beaten her twice, and had not the fight she wanted to have. And it really stung. Like, there was this feeling maybe that she had finally gotten past Palmy, like kind of solved that kind of fighter. And Palmy had a great performance on her own. She made changes and fought in a different way and had this energy about her. And that loss was unexpectedly hard. Like, you fight so many times and you feel like I should get past this part where losing hurts like that. And then processed the loss at a really high level, came back 2 days later, fought Nang Hong, who had just recently beaten Palmy in a big fight, and Sylvie fought at an incredible way. Like, was, to me, watching her, she was transformed by the process of the loss, the pain of the loss, and her response. And I think what we're talking about here, a lot of people talk about losing, like, either you win or you learn, right? Your favorite, you hate that one, right? Because it feels like it's not being spoken from actual experience. Like, there's something about losing as much as you do when you fight 240 times. You've lost 70 times.
70.
Right. I think what we want to talk about is the necessity of losing. Like, losing contributes something to the process of being a fighter that, in a way, has to be there if you want the process to mean something. Like, Mayweather never loses. It doesn't mean he doesn't grow as a fighter or as a human being or whatever, but the absence of loss is the absence of a really integral part of what fighting can mean. You said to me when we were talking about this recently, you were lucky that you lost your first fight.
Yeah, so what I was saying to Kevin when I said that was, I feel badly for the burden people who win their first couple of fights have when eventually they will lose. If you're fighting the right people, eventually you'll lose. And so, having started out win-win-win, you have this, like, everything works. Like, there's no error in the machine. Like, your diagnostic is all just this kind of, like, positive thing that you don't learn early on how to deal with that difficulty and pain of loss. It's, if you think of, like, really affluent, wealthy, privileged people who never come across difficulty, so when they finally hit some kind of adversity, they are totally ill-prepared for it. Like, they just haven't learned the tools yet. I feel like, having lost my first fight, and people who lose their first fights, multiple, you learn so early on how to deal with that in your process. and that you still want to push forward, like from loss, you get back up and you go again. Those people learn very early on.
It's folded
how to be tough.
It's folded into the meaning of fighting right away.
Yeah, you know it's part of it from early, rather than like, well, I guess now I have to learn how to do
after
this.
10 wins, now you lost.
Although that guy that you like who got knocked out handled it really well.
He did.
What's his
Askren.
name? Askren.
But he lost. He had some big losses in wrestling before he became an MMA fighter. Matter of fact, he lost his Olympic push. It was a devastating loss for him. But he might, I don't know, this is what this is about, is what I'm drawn to is the idea that loss is a kind of destructive process that can be productive and necessary.
Yeah, you were going to talk about mTOR
Yeah.
to explain that.
Yeah, I don't know if I wanted to go right to that. You threw me for a loop, baby.
Oh, I'm putting you on the spot. You did it to me.
Put me on. Let me think for a second. It's something this is gonna be a total fucking curveball, but this is how my brain works. We were looking into the benefits of the ketogenic diet and fasting, and one of the benefits is something called autophagy, which is when the body goes into a fasting state or is deprived of nutrients, it starts to eat itself.
It's what we're doing today. It's a fasting day.
Yeah, we're fasting today. It starts to eat itself, which means it will start to break down cells that are not working optimally, breaking down protein strands that are already broken. It kind of is it's
cleanup.
Sometimes described as like taking out the garbage.
Yeah, it's a cleanup.
It's like a cleaning. mTOR is a state that when it's triggered, the body or parts of the body, like tissues, organs, when mTOR is triggered, it's in a growth state, which means that that's when you can grow muscles, when things will multiply. When you fast, you turn off mTOR, and that's when you get things start to be broken down. I have to go to the left?
Oh, no, keep going straight. I thought this was that intersection. It's not. Sorry.
Okay. One of the interesting things about turning off mTOR that they've found is that it leads to longevity. That if a body is stimulated, if mTOR is stimulated in a body, it will produce muscle, it will grow in size, but its lifespan will be reduced. I mean, yes, we will reduced. When the mTOR is decreased, when autophagy kicks in, the longevity of an organism will be increased.
So for what reasons would they turn off mTOR?
Who's they?
You said when you turn off mTOR, you build, but your life expectancy goes down.
No, it's not. Oh, when you turn on mTOR, yeah.
Yeah, so what would you turn on mTOR for?
To grow muscle or size. But they were saying that like mTOR is the difference between a Great Dane and a Chihuahua. Like literally organisms grow on schedules that are very complex. But this is the interesting thing about mTOR, is that the body is not completely turned on mTOR. You might be growing your muscles, mTOR is turned on there, but mTOR is turned off in the liver or something. Like there's repair going on there. You need a balance between breaking something down and growing it. That the human body kind of operates in this oscillation, that you don't just want growth. You need to break down. And when you break things down, then they can be recycled. Then you can take the garbage out. And there's something about losing that definitely feels like an autophagy kind of experience. Like the pain, there is a sting of losing. Even a fight that you might have everyone tells you won and the referee was fixed, or they don't know what they're doing. Even in a fight you know you won, but you still lost, there's still a pain of it. And that pain is some part of you breaking down. And when something is broken down, it can be cleaned up. And I think that I'm not saying that if you don't lose, you can't ever go through these cleanup processes. Maybe you're training, maybe you lose all the time in training. Like you experience the loss, minor losses in training, and you clean up, right? But I have to say that in fighting, like right now, I'd say for the last 2 or 3 years, you've been losing 2 to 3 fights out of every 10. And it's pretty consistent. Even though you keep improving, the size of your opponents keep going up. What it means to me is you are right on the zone of where you should be. You're fighting the right level of difficulty because you're losing and winning at the same rate.
Yeah.
That means mTOR is turned on 7 or 8 times out of 10, 2 or 3 times out of 10, mTOR is turned off, and you go through these autophagy moments, which is the pain breaks you down.
Yeah.
And I was really struck by how hard the Palmy fight hit you, because only 4 or 5 days ago, I'm like, oh my God, Sylvie's getting to that point where it feels like she might not ever lose again. And you said you had felt that maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, that was in
a
training
stretch.
though, yeah.
It doesn't matter when.
Yeah.
Like, it's a thought, right?
Yeah.
That you don't ever have.
Yeah.
Or seldom have. And I'm like, that's mTOR, that's like growth, muscle growth, improvement of skills, improvement of eyesight, improvement of emotional capacities. And then a loss comes that sideswipes you and fucking hits you with a pain. And what that pain is doing, it's breaking something apart. That's what hurts, is that it's breaking something. And then you take inventory. Like, it feels like I honestly don't know what you went through to get yourself back on the rope, but I was fucking stunned about how agile you were responding to that pain. It's fucking incredible, baby.
There's this thing about, like, that when you beat someone, I think that we do it prematurely. It's like you beat someone once and then you're like, well, I beat that person, so I'm better than that person.
Yeah.
And then if you fought someone many times, who most of my opponents I've fought more than once, you have this like, well, I shouldn't lose to them now because like I've beat them and so it's settled. Like that's been done now. And that's not how it works on a long enough timeline. Anything can happen in a fight. Anyone can defeat anybody. And this fight against Nang Hong, who I think I've only lost to her once, and this was like our 7th fight together or something. It was a hard fight. Like, there's no, oh, I beat Nang Hong every time. I fucking fight hard to beat Nang Hong every time.
They're very, very tough
they're
fights.
They're not easy fights.
Yeah.
There are no easy fights. But it's this... I think that part of my difficulty with the Palmy fight was feeling like I had regressed. Which, first of all, no. Like, you never lose all of the things that you've been working on for all this time if you end up doing something that you also did 6 months ago. You haven't actually time traveled back and lost all of that work you put in. You may have had an amazing training leading up to your fight and learned tons of things and used none of them in the fight. You still did all that work. Like, it's still with you. You didn't throw it out the window because you lost your fight. I think it's very easy to forget that because losing feels so shitty. And so this whole thought process, and it's the same thing I was talking about even mental training, where you're like, well, I don't have those thoughts anymore. It's like, yes, you do. You just deal with them differently.
Yeah.
Is like, well, I don't lose to Palmy anymore, or I don't lose anymore. It's like, yes, you do. You make those same mistakes. You overturn. You hesitate. You stay on the porch. Like, all of these things that were huge problems before and are like intermittent problems now, you're always just rearranging plates on a table. You're never like taking plates off. Like I just don't do that anymore.
Right.
And when you were talking about mTOR, I was thinking about Wung. There was this incredible trainer at Lana when we first went, Wung, who, when we were in the truck on the way back from a fight, he was talking about one of the boys. And I think he was trying to make me feel better about having lost or something.
I think
or maybe even one of the boys had lost. It may not have been me. But he had this like drunken, rambling thing.
Yeah, he's a drunken master.
Where he's like, oh, it's okay. You win 2 times, then you lose once, then you win 3 times, then you fight in Bangkok, then you lose again. And it was like this made up, improvised formula of fighting involves winning and losing. And I think what I hate about the you either win or you learn, or something that they like to say in Thai, is sports have win and loss.
Say it in Thai.
Gila mi chana mi pe. So like, sports have winning and losing. Both of them are completely true. Both of them are completely valuable things to say. But the way that they're said is to end the conversation. It's to like, well, we don't think about this anymore. We just say this thing.
Baby,
There's
so
a word for that. It's when something's really trite.
You brush it under the rug.
No, there's a word for like phrases that
In
are
English?
like that. Yeah.
Cliche?
It's like that, but that's not it. I'll think of it in like an hour.
Okay.
But it's that, and that's why I hate them. That's why I hate when people like.
Let's end the conversation
like,
on an upbeat note. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Where it's really about, let's continue the conversation so that the process, to me, the process of repair can happen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like if someone was grieving and you're like, everybody dies. That is true, and that actually might be a comforting thought if you flesh it out. But by itself is kind of like, go fuck yourself.
That's really true.
A little bit.
That's really true. Well, what do you think about? I don't know. We've talked about this embracing the suffering, continuing. I was thinking before we started the podcast, I was like, it's not that, it's that square oneism. It's our last podcast. You can look it up as a David Goggins principle, which is you always return back to the base note of suffering, the discomfort of suffering. And it's your ability to endure and respond positively to that suffering that makes the difference. The actual suffering does not end.
Yep.
It's like, and that's why when you lose your 246th fight, 7th fight, it feels not that dissimilar to losing your first fight. Like, the pain of losing is familiar. You disagree with me?
I think that my ability to get over it in a day and get back in the ring is...
You did not listen to me.
Okay, say it again.
I'm going to say it again.
Okay.
You return to the same feeling.
Yes.
But what changes is how you are able to respond to.
Oh, the recovery.
The recovery is very different and very practiced.
Yep.
But just because you're practiced at recovering from that feeling doesn't mean you never get to feel the feeling again. The feeling returns. It's like David Goggins looks at his shoes and doesn't want to put his shoes on and go running at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
The same way he didn't want to do that when he was 280 pounds 10 years ago.
Totally.
It's the same feeling, but his response to that feeling changes.
Yeah.
And it's this thing where you're like, this is the weird feeling about, an intuition I'm having about loss that I got from you losing to Palmy was losing is refreshing to the process in the way that like autophagy and turning off mTOR produces longevity in an organism, that there is something valuable about this losing that must also happen in training.
Yeah.
Like, things have to break for them to be cleaned up and improved.
But before I forget it, the word
jump.
The word is platitude.
Ah, very much so.
But this links into that thing that I heard when I was walking, and it kind of was the moment that I started like turning around after my loss. Which was that it was a SEAL who was
Navy
saying,
SEAL.
never quit in darkness. And he's talking about like Hell Week or something, where like at 0 dark 30, you're just like, this is never gonna end. You're at your like breaking point, fucking rock bottom point. And he's like, that's not when you quit, because the sun will come up and you'll feel better, and you didn't continue enough to get to the point where you would feel better. And I totally like felt this, where when you lose and you're feeling sorry for yourself and you really just want to like drive all those thoughts real deep in like, let's go down that path and say all the bad things about myself, is if you quit under that stink, that like self-pity, I'm the worst, I've gone backwards, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. You keep all of that.
Yeah.
It's like if you have one of those like machines where the money's flipping around, you like grab as much as you can, and it's like, we're gonna blast it full of shit money that isn't worth anything, and then 10 minutes later we're gonna like put real money in it. You're gonna have a mix of shit money and real money, but you're gonna have real money. Whereas if you only grab the shit money and then you're like, time to get out, when you quit in darkness, you stay in darkness, and you never know. Like, you never know what could have come out of that, and you rob yourself of
and the whole
Rahu, the like opportunity comes out of chaos. As I was listening, I posted this on my Facebook page. I was listening to a commencement speech from the woman who was the first active duty Miss USA. And she had this beautiful line where she said, don't be afraid of failure, but please be terrified of regret. And that's that quitting in darkness thing. That's like, okay, Sylvie, you feel real shitty about losing, where you're like, I'm terrible and I like haven't learned anything and I'm the worst. If you want to quit after you win, okay, then quit. If you don't have the love for it after you win, great, it's real. You don't have the love for it anymore, go home.
Yeah.
I totally remember not wanting to go to my violin lessons, and my mom would
when
be
you
like,
were very little.
And my mom would be like, nope, like you go. And it's like, if when you're not drunk and crying in the shower, you still don't want to do the thing, okay, but you don't make that decision here. Let's have some coffee first.
Pretty awesome. What are you doing?
Fixing my mic.
Fixing your thing. Okay, let's go to the next section.
Yeah, I have to change the battery again.
Okay. Rolling?
Rolling.
So this topic is connected to what we were just doing by accident, right? I wanted to talk about, when we were doing the live stream, so every fight of Sylvie's is live streamed. Me and I've started commentating on the live stream. One reason why I'm commentating on the live stream is that I'm trying to develop the skill of commentating on a live fight, because we're thinking of doing a female fight promotion series that we might broadcast live or in YouTube form with live commentary. So I want to build the skill of being able to talk about live action fighting. I'm practicing on your fights. And maybe we'd have me and you, or me and someone else. So anyways, I was commentating on your fight at the end, and I was just kind of amazed by your performance. I keep saying your performance against Nang Hong, but it was really your mental performance against her. We said she's 55 kilos. She's probably 58 kilos. She looks like she's gotten like bigger and solid. Like her thighs are just fucking huge. And that's 12 kilos. Like, it's a tremendous amount of weight. that you were giving up against a very experienced, good fighter, a very aggressive fighter, and you had won and you'd gone down, I was on the fight apron, and I was just like, everybody think about what you're watching here, that this is so historic. There's a big thing about your fight numbers, like the total 240 coming on 250, maybe this epic thing to go 471 times. I think it's underappreciated, and this is what I was saying on the live stream, and I want to talk about it a little bit here. What it really means and what it's like to just get in the ring 2 or 3, sometimes 4 times a month for 7 years. Like, I don't even care how you perform. Getting into a fight, even if you were like fighting nobodies, which is not the fucking case. The Thai female fighters you're fighting are in the class of the better fighters in the world, and you're giving up weight each time. Just getting into a ring is like getting into a car accident. It's an emotional car accident. Like, you're getting into the ring with somebody who's trying to hurt you. And in your case, it's someone who's trying to hurt you who has 10% body weight advantage on you. Like, who's physically, their frame is larger than you. When you're in the ring with somebody bigger than you, even if you have all the technical skills, even if you have all the technical advantages, there is an emotional thing that happens to the body and the mind when you are perceiving somebody who takes up more space than you. That there is a disadvantage, a psychological disadvantage that's involved with facing off against somebody who's just physically bigger than you. If you're walking down the street and you're pushed into close quarters in a line or something, and the person next to you is smaller than you or taller and bigger than you, you have a different emotional response. And I'm like, sorry to go on about this, but I'm just like, you have to mark this. For 7 years, you've been getting in the ring 2, 3, 4 times a month without stopping. And I'm like, this is an ultra run that's never been done. Like, no Thais did this either. Like, nobody's done this in the history of fighting, I think. And I'm like, it has to be appraised and acknowledged what that kind of run is. And I don't know, I don't want to ask the obvious question, what's that like, Sylvie? But I'm like, what is that like? Like, do you give yourself credit for getting up for a fight basically 3 times a month? Like, we just went on a trip. You fought 3 solid fighters, all of them bigger than you. Boom, boom, boom. Like, I don't know.
It's weird what becomes hard when you're doing hard things. Right? Like,
yeah.
Like, I'm amazed at pad holders who hold for fucking enormous farang one after another, like 6 in a row, and then do it again in the afternoon and do it every day. Like, you're tired after your 3 to 5 rounds and you're like, you really blasted it or whatever. They're holding for other people after you, and like kicking pads and holding pads is not the same, but holding pads is not easy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an easy job.
Yeah.
So I was pretty amazed on this trip because I haven't had the like 3 in a row in a while. It's been a while since I've had 3 in a week.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
I was surprised because after the Jong Kwan fight, Jong Kwan's like 50 kilos, which to me is like not that big. It's still 4 kilos bigger than me, but like not immense. After that fight, I was kind of surprised at how sore I was given that she was not that much bigger. I'm like, wow, like I'm always fighting bigger, so I always thought the soreness came from like having to wrestle someone so huge and then kicking so hard. And I'm like, she's not that big, why? I'm still sore,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then I fight 2 fucking giants And the level of sore as it's like building up and clinching with Tonadette in between, like the degree of sore is so high. But it's just normal.
But
Whereas,
it's not a physicality or just a physicality sore. It's an emotional sore. Because when you are under duress and someone's trying to hurt you,
you tense up. Yeah.
Not only do you physically tense, but your fucking hormones are like defense, save the organism. Like you are getting charged, right?
Yeah.
Adrenaline is pumping, cortisol is pumping. Like there is a charge that you are undergoing. Do you just? Am I putting words in your mouth here? Like
I think that's true. I don't really think about that.
I'm trying to make you think about it because you're achieving it.
I actually feel like when there's 3 in a row, the emotional, mental part, it's like, okay, this is gonna hurt, and this is gonna be hard, and I'm gonna be tired. Like it's easier to accept it.
Oh, you fight very well when you fight many in a row. Like I would be like, if you were gonna fight like some kind of like world championship blah 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 fight, I'm like, please fight 5 fights in a row.
Don't get ready for it.
Like for a month before that fight, because then you'll just be fucking ready to go. The emotional component, I think, of like acquiescing and flowing with it, you're very accomplished in. But there still is the hurdle of getting charged like that 3 times a month for 7 years.
Yeah.
Like, we have this process which is train like hell, like really hard, and then go test kitchen it, usually once or twice a month. You travel out and you go, and then you just jump right back in, train like hell, test kitchen it. This cycle is just like, I don't know, I just have an appreciation, a growing appreciation. It's like watching an ultra runner who ran 100 miles in through the fucking desert, and you're like, yeah, and there's 70 more to go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and you just ran 100 miles through the desert. Like, people underestimate just how elite this process is. There's not I don't think there's a single Western fighter who has had even a single year of fighting of 7 you've had. There's reasons why. It's not like they don't want to. A lot of it is like, what kind of opportunities can a single gym give you? Like, or a single fight scene. We've grown the process so much through contacts. You have opportunities no other fighter has.
Yeah, I have the ability to fight up. Whereas if you're already big, you can't.
Yeah, there's no. It's not that other fighters are pussies about it in any way, but the fact of the matter is, you have the opportunity and then you do it. Like, you make the very most of the opportunity that you've made for yourself, and part of that is this like incredible hurdle jumping. I don't know, I wish I can't come up with the question I want to ask you other than what's it like. I'm just like literally just amazed that for 7 years you're getting in the ring under danger, getting charged. Like, I'm kind of flabbergasted by it. I don't know why it's hitting me hard this one particular time. Maybe it was because that Palmy fight hit you a little bit emotionally, like mentally. And I'm like, you do this every month. Like, when you beat Palmy the last time, you emotionally had a valley before you fought her.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That was hard. You do that every month.
Yeah.
You hit these valleys before a fight, self-doubt. Like, that's what people don't see. It's not just a physical thing. What are you laughing about?
I wrote this kind of as like a toss-off line or whatever, although I believe it's true. But people asking me about getting nervous before fights because people think there's something wrong if they're nervous.
Right.
And I've listened to mental training podcasts and things where they talk about, like, if you talk to any Olympic gold medalists, they were fucking nervous. Like, they had self-doubt before they did these incredible performances. Like, it's not a bug, it's a feature kind of thing. But I'm laughing because those, like, pits I put myself in, or the, like, doubt, or the I fucking don't want to fight Balmy again, or, like, going in against someone who's so much bigger, and you're like, when is that gonna stop? And it's like, it's not. That's your new normal kind of thing.
Right.
People who are less accustomed to their version of that, people who are nervous before their first fight or their third fight, or like whatever the thing is, the line that I kind of like threw in is, it's like, yeah, I get nervous before fights, but as part of the process, it's like how you get sleepy before you go to sleep. If you were like, oh my God, why am I so sleepy? Like, what is wrong with this? Like, go to sleep. You're a duck. Go to sleep. Like,
You're so funny, man.
That it's like a built-in
Well,
feature?
It's excitation before really being excited.
Right, but so it's what meaning you give it. And I guess that's what I was trying to say in my Sparta Chicks Radio podcast interview, of how your self-doubt comes with you. You don't leave that outside of the ring. That comes with you. It's just whether or not you give it importance in the ring. Like, is this going to be significant or not? And if you can bring it in and be like, okay, I know you're here, but you don't have part of this. You just stand there. Like, don't take up too much space. I'll be done in a minute kind of thing. You can have the, like, serious doubt before the fight, the I don't want to do this, the, like, how the fuck do I escape out the back door, like, kind of feelings. I don't get them that extreme. But before my Nang Hong fight, which was the third in this series, and I was coming off of the feeling super shitty with Pommy, it rained a lot. And so I got a call from Dang that was like, this fight might not be happening tonight.
Yeah.
You want to know what gives you a fucking, like, tailspin mental day is whether or not the fight's gonna happen. Where you feel terrible that you're like, that'd be cool if the fight didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right?
I thought you get a little smile
but you're like, but I also really want to fight. Like, you're of two minds. So while I'm like flabbergasted that Thai men can hold two conflicting thoughts in their minds, I do it all the time. But I guess doing that 3 times a month for 7 years is, it just becomes,
it's the hidden
normal
thing that I'm surprised that more fighters are not, like, really lifting you up, because they're the ones that know how hard it is to get in the ring repeatedly. Like, it's never easy. Even if you're fighting people that you should be beating, which doesn't often happen to people. Like, even if you created the most idealistic thing, it's still traumatic. There's something, I was talking to a friend of ours who fought several times and then found themselves not fighting anymore. And I was talking to him, and they were like of two minds whether they wanted to fight again. Like, they're not sure. But it'd been some time. And I was like, a funny thing happens when you've been fighting and then you stop fighting. You lose the calluses. Like, what it takes to get in the ring and just get smacked takes a certain kind of, like, callus. That once you're fighting, it's not a big deal because you're ready for the jarring quality of it. But what shows how harsh fighting is that if you stop fighting, it's very hard to start again.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's why Diesel Noi has you train fatigue, is you have to be very, very familiar with fatigue. Because if you've not been familiar with it for a while, you're like,
totally.
I can't do this.
Totally. And can you not afford the perspective of that this is an amazing achievement or a worthy achievement?
Of course,
because
it's a worthy achievement.
because you're on the path. Like, we don't know anybody who's fought 30 fights? Any Westerners fought 30 fights in a year? Like, I don't know. Maybe they're out there, but they didn't do it 4 years.
Yeah, they didn't
do
share
it
it the way that I did.
7 years. What?
They didn't fucking share it the way I did.
There's nobody out there who's secretly doing it.
Yeah.
Like, what I'm saying is what you're doing is like humanly rare. And I guess also valuable in the sense that this process is one that's recorded. We're doing a very weird kind of like, we wrote about it in Tyson the Cat, we podcasted about it in Tyson the Catskills in a previous Muay Thai Bones, is like, you're learning from all these legends, you're getting like a huge influx of knowledge, like teaching knowledge, and then you're pushing it through a fight and train process that is at a fight rate nobody has ever done before, over a length of time nobody has ever done before, against size disadvantages nobody's ever done before, and you're pushing the whole process through over a period that's going to be like over a decade, probably 15, 17 years. I don't know, and then you're folding in these these experiences of loss, of breakdown, of what we were talking about, the importance of loss in a kind of like reformation of yourself. I don't know.
But that's because that's just part of the process. It's not like a let's do this now kind of thing.
What does that mean?
I don't like choose to lose. It's just part of the
Absolutely
process.
not, but you choose to fight people that you can lose to.
Yeah.
Like, what usually happens is you get good, and then people get picky about their opponents, and they become rarer and rarer.
I think that makes losing harder.
Yeah.
Because like you should have had all these advantages. Like you should have had an easy go of it.
Totally.
Whereas when you're like, my advantages were what now? It's a little easier.
Yeah.
Maybe. Still feels shitty though.
So I want to talk about a technique that you've been working on as maybe the last segment here. And we don't have to spend too much time on it. We spent a long time in the early part of the podcast about techniques in terms of flow. But I want to talk a little bit about something you've been working on in the gym. And it's important to either someone else's Muay or your own. And I didn't give you a heads up on
No.
this. So what is something that you've been...
Oh shit, you're gonna make me choose it too.
Well, I'm not in the gym. I can't choose it. Like, maybe you've shared it with me, but I'm not sure what you'd been thinking about.
I've been working a lot on this long guard.
So the long guard is like a folded arm and an extended arm usually, right? Well, there's a podcast on, so you have to talk.
For those of you who can't see it, your front arm is out straight and your chin is tucked behind your shoulder, and then your power arm is kind of up high to protect from like hooks and uppercuts and things like that at a closer range. It's basically like a sword and a shield. For our LARPing D&D friends.
Or Roman history, Roman military history.
I know we have a lot of you guys as listeners. But I had a hard time coming to the long guard and believing in the long guard because I'm short. So because I don't have reach, I was like, using a long reaching guard doesn't make sense because I'm short. It made no sense to me.
This is something you said to yourself, and you felt,
Totally.
And you felt it.
So for 5 years, Pinu's been like, fucking do this long guard, and he insists on it, and I just don't do it, and I do this like max protect, like curling around myself short guard. That's more of like a boxing guard. And he kept telling me, this is why you get cut. If you had a long guard, you would not get cut. And I'm like, that makes no sense. My opponents are long and I'm short. I need to protect close. Because elbows coming at me are a close range weapon. What I did not think is that if elbows are a close range weapon, if you keep people from getting close to you, those elbows won't reach. So I believe Pinu. I trust Pinu. I've been working on it, but because I didn't believe it myself, I never
body,
like fully.
Yeah.
You have to believe in your.
With your guard, you have to feel safe, right? Like,
which is why it's really good to have trainers who like hit you. But Chicken Man, who recently has been put in the Muay Thai library, he's amazing. He's a trainer at Petrungrung. He's short. he's like my height, maybe a little bit taller. And he was showing me the long guard and how this is how you keep people off of you, and seeing him do it and then doing it myself, I finally like felt it. I think that I had a disadvantage learning it from Pinu because Pinu is so long.
Yeah.
So having a short person show me this and have it work the way that it works when Pinu's talking about it, it just is that like when you see someone like you, it kind of like connects better kind of thing. And so I started really committing to this longer guard. And I'm just getting better all around. So being able to play with it and use it in space is something that I'm better at now, whereas when I was working at it before, my tension and my turning and all these other flaws were making it so that I couldn't believe in that guard. And as I've started to carve those away, I've been able to train it better mentally. And so now I'm really believing in it.
What do you think the thing is like the comfort level of believing? Because this is the most important thing, that if you do not, when you say believe, you mean
trust.
Your body feels the safety.
Yes.
Like it's not cerebral. It's like believing that you're sitting on the chair or you're balanced on the skateboard. You can feel it, right?
And like,
you have to feel the click. All the angles click together,
and it works
right?
for strikes too. Like I, for the longest time, was pulling all of my kicks because I just don't believe in my kick. And recently, I've been really hitting it more because of belief in it. I haven't changed anything technically about my kick at all. It's just a belief. But so with this long guard, last night when I was fighting Nang Hong, who likes to cut me, she was throwing a lot of elbows, and I was doing a pretty good long guard, but I was kind of like bringing it in tight when I was feeling like she really wanted to elbow me. And Dang in the corner was like, keep your guard long, which I remember Pinu being like, when you put it long like this, you're actually snuffing people's arms closer to their body, and so they can't get things off. And
I think I missed.
No, this is correct. This is how we go towards Bangkok.
Okay, good.
I could feel it. I could feel its advantage to the closer guard
in the fight
that I was falling to sometimes out of habit in the fight. Like my awareness of it was like, yes, this is better. And that comes from how much work I've been putting into both the mental and physical side of training that guard.
What kind of work have you been doing? Just like in pad work, you're like, Pinu, hit me with it? Like
no, in pad work, he insists on it a lot. Like he will literally grab my arms and correct them because I make it too wide. I like don't. This is the thing about a long guard, is if you have your arms be floppy, you don't actually have a guard. People like to keep it tight because when you're close, your arms are tight anyway. If you keep your arms close and they're floppy, you still don't have a guard. So it's harder to like really rigidify your arms when they're out long and not be like bothered by people trying to move them and things like this. So getting that rigidity and strength, and it's almost like balance within your arms, takes a really long time. So in pad work, he's doing that, but I think that mostly it's been when I'm sparring, being like, I'm gonna get hit a lot by Champ, or Carabao if he's there, and being like, I'm going to use this guard to protect myself. And things get through, and it's like pouring water in the bucket. You find where the holes are, and then you're like, okay, fix that, as opposed to like, well, I can't put any water in the bucket because there's probably holes in it. It's like you find the holes. So that's the technique I've been working really hard on.
What do you think it is? I find this is kind of interesting. You were talking about when Crew Guy, who's short, showed you the long guard, it made sense to you. What is it about the long guard for short people that's different than the long guard for long people?
I think it's like if you mistook the teep for belonging to long fighters because it is long. You're like, oh, well, it's long, so it goes with long. But it's like the length of it is for a particular range, but its purpose is really about timing.
And its relationship is to your own other ranges. So it would be like, you might not have a baritone voice, But it doesn't mean you don't sing low notes in relationship to your other notes, right? So having longer weapons, like last night, you were teeping like a motherfucker. You're not long,
No.
but the teep was really effective because of how that note, that long note, relates to your other notes, which are close range.
Yeah.
You're a close range fighter, but then you throw in a long range weapon. Long for you. She still has to relate to your range of notes,
Yeah.
right? Why are you laughing?
I thought it was a stupid example.
You don't want to tell me?
I can't use a knife to cut bread because I don't eat carbs. It's like you can still use a knife to cut meat. Like it does the same
Oh,
thing.
that's very true.
Like it has the same effect.
And it's kind of interesting also with Dieselnoy in the gym and Pinu teaching you long guard, and other people have taught you long guard. Dang, there's a session in the Dracula guard is a form of the long guard. There's a session in the Muay Thai library that Krudang teaches you the long guard. But you're getting taught the long guard by Pinu, who's very long, and then Dieselnoy is teaching you his knees. And the ironic thing is you're incorporating these weapons that are considered like long physiology weapons, and you're applying them as a small fighter.
Yeah.
And they still apply.
Yeah.
Like you can knee like Dieselnoy as a small fighter.
Yeah.
Do you not find that to be like, what do you think is the trick about that? Are they just less effective, but they can still be effective?
I don't know. I think it's kind of when you use them. Like you might have a slightly different rhythm. Like as a tall fighter, if you're going to use the long guard, you're keeping someone way outside, like where they can't even reach you. Whereas when you're using the long guard as a shorter person, you're making the weapon that they already fired not reach you, rather than keeping them from being able to fire in the first place.
So you're not you're juggling more as a tall fighter, but as a shorter fighter, you're actually interfering with the fighting zone, like the hitting zone.
I think so.
That's kind of cool.
Like, because Tyson is a short fighter, people want to jab him all day, right? But he does that fucking TikTok thing to get past your jab, and they panic and they jab more. But then once he gets into his range, it's not like Tyson has no jab because he's short. He's just got to TikTok his way in, and then he's got his hooks and his jabs at that shorter range. But it's like, when does he use them? He's not going to use it like a long...
He's not going to be a long jabbing fighter, That's actually a really good, interesting weapon, use of that weapon. And then Pinu's teaching you how to fire out of it. Offensively,
which is really
not
good.
just use it as a defensive interrupter. And also the long guard might really do well with your teep, where you kind of have these medium range, like you have a long version and they're like two different poles that you can fight with. Kind of cool.
And protects against elbows. Hurrah. I got elbowed last night, but was not cut.
Not cut, baby. Okay, so I think we finished up I think this is our 9th. We'll check the title. I think this is the 9th Muay Thai Bones. Pretty awesome.
There's a lot of meat on those bones.
There is a lot of meat on those bones. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can also get Muay Thai Bones and a whole lot of other stuff as iTunes, in an iTunes subscription by becoming a patron. We
keep adding things to that, so you actually get more all the time because we're adding more things.
Oh, it's incredible. Even for $1 pledge a month, you get the Muay Thai Bones subscription, the Muay Thai library, and you get 2 new Muay Thai library videos with commentary every month, Sylvie's Patron magazine articles. It's kind of incredible what even $1 gets you. And I'm going to tell you, every single person almost that signs up for $1 edits their pledge up to 5.
Yeah, that's true.
Or 10. Like, they're like, boom. They're like, oh my God, there's
more.
It's unbelievable how much is in that patron. There's over 450 articles, which is insane that we've published that much. And if you're, thank you if you're on iTunes already and listening to us. if you have ideas about you'd like other things we can do in podcast form, we kind of would like to expand the podcast version of it because you put out so much content that it's kind of hard to watch it all.
Yeah.
Like there's literally hours and hours and hours.
It's actually a library.
It's
like, I read everything in here.
We don't just call it a library. So if you have ideas of podcast approaches we can take, we're going to keep up with these like 3-hour crazy long ones because
we're in the car.
We like to be, well, it's not just convenience. It's like we like to go in depth on stuff.
Yeah,
we want to talk about
these things normally.
We want to talk about Muay Thai in a way that nobody ever has and maybe ever will. But 30-minute, 45-minute podcasts maybe are things that we can do as well. It's easy. I think it's easier as a subscriber on iTunes to kind of regularly access the thoughts and things that you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're a patron and you're trying to like move through the library and all the content, there's so much stuff in there. If you come across ideas or something like that and shoot them at us, we can talk about things that are...
Oh, you mean things they find in the library?
Yeah.
Yeah, just send Sylvie a message on Facebook or on Patreon. You can message us.
I only have 1 minion right now.
What?
So I actually do see all my messages.
Totally.
So when you guys, a lot of times people send messages to me and they're like, I don't know if you read your own messages. I don't have a team. So yeah, I see my own
basically
messages.
am like, Sylvie, another message on Patreon. Sylvie, another comment on Instagram. That's basically what I'm doing. Sylvie, message. All right. Shutting it down till our next trip across Thailand. Thank you for being with us. Riding, God knows how long this has been.
Yeah, well, it'll be a surprise when we get home. Yeah, it'll be.
All right, cue
thanks,
music.
guys. Cue music.
Oh, I love that salsa. Is it salsa music?
Da, 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 da.
Not the Terminator music.